listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is James Payne. We have Mo on the controls today.
Hello.
And Chris is in the studio.
Hello.
And today is a perfect example. I'm very excited for this episode because this is a perfect example of why, as much as it can sometimes be tough to make it in here every week during a hunting season, I really don't like the idea of like getting too far ahead of ourselves and like doing 2 in a week to try and like give ourselves more time to hunt, because you guys had one heck of a weekend and both ended up getting some bears on the ground, putting some fresh bear meat in the freezer. And we get to talk about it this week rather than having to like push anything around and like, you know, make things work. So I'm excited for that. Congratulations to both you guys.
Thank you.
I believe
Thank you.
this is the, I think this episode's the first one to drop in June, isn't it? This is the first Monday in June.
You're
So
right.
this is the hot time for baits. So hopefully everybody will be experiencing a very similar thing to you two. But yeah, congratulations. And I'm excited to hear the stories in a little bit fuller. We had a little bit of green time before the show, but I'm excited to hear
More.
rehear the details and maybe hear some additions that I hadn't heard. So, Mo, why don't you kick it off? You got the first one.
I did.
So first one on the ground for the TNH crew.
All right. So, well, I mean, my day started out good. The weekend started out good. Got out to the bait, had bears hitting it, nice bears. And Sunday morning after church, I was driving home with my wife, and am I gonna hunt? Am I gonna go hunt tonight? Am I not? I'm hemming and hawing. Like, is it worth it? Should I just let him eat and like let more bears come in? And I was like, no, I'm gonna go.
Because you had a few hitting.
I had a
right?
few. Yeah, I had a few, and so I'm going. I'm gonna go hunt. If I get one now, that's one less. One less tag that I have to fill later, and
There you go.
having the whole idea that I'll just fill them all later. Like, the sooner I shoot one, the better chance there is I'm gonna kill another. And so I'm gonna go. So I finally, amongst editing the podcast and other things I had to do that afternoon, I finally get out of the house, head out of town. All my gear was not packed like it should be, because I was putting a different bait out on Saturday. So I get to my parking spot. Well, before I get to my parking spot, I pull over at the spot. I'll glass some hillsides just to see if there's any bears in the area, right before I head down to where I park and hunt.
Never waste an opportunity.
And so I get up there, I pull over to glass, and this ugly black truck pulls up next to me. And it's Chris. And anyway, he pulls over, says hi, and heads off to his bait. And I run down.
The truck you can hear coming from a mile
My truck's just as loud.
Imagine if you're just like in the middle of a spot and stock, just
Right.
I love when Chris is rolling up somewhere because I'm just like, I know that truck.
I mean, it's funny. I make fun of his ugly black truck because mine's probably uglier, and it's a Dodge.
Well, at least his is a Ford.
Exactly.
Yeah.
mine's. I hate how it's just not discreet at all.
Yeah, no, mine's not either.
It's a horrible hunting rig.
Except the fact that it's not, because it's already beat up, right? Like,
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
that's the way I feel about that Dodge. But anyway, I have the Dodge. He has the Ford. But anyway,
Horrible for Colin too.
Oh, dude,
I'm
I
sure,
can imagine. You blow out the whole valley before you even park.
Like, it's just like, and he just come home empty-handed. Well, I did drive the diesel today.
They hear you a mile away. Well, Chris is coming. Better go. Run for the hills.
My wife's like, "What happened the last time you got stuff in the diesel? Like, what was the deal there?" Just like, whatever.
it's warmer. I didn't.
Don't
shut
you
it off.
judge me.
Yeah, it was different. It was louder today. Okay, it was running better.
I don't need you judging me right now.
I don't need you judging me.
But anyway, so you were glassing the hillside.
Yeah, glass the hillside. I didn't see any bears. That's normal. I know other people that have seen bears in there. Just about everybody I think I know that's driven through there says they've seen a bear in there, except for me. But anyhow,
Probably seen your bear before.
probably have. Yeah. Anyhow, I go down bait spot, pack up all my gear, get on the wheeler. By the time I get into the bait, it's like 8:15.
Okay.
Lighter than I wanted to be in there. Pull the cards, jump in the stand.
That's still early enough to be.
It
before
definitely
prime time,
is.
but
It
yeah.
definitely is. And
Yeah.
after Chris tells his story, I know another guy that got one the same night I did. Second bear for the year for him. But I'll talk a little bit about that too. But anyhow, I jump in the stand, grab the cards, looking at pictures, and one of the bears, I think it was a smaller one, had been in there like 30 minutes before, 45 minutes before. And I hadn't knocked it, I hadn't busted it off or anything like that, but it'd been there. Like, well, cool. Bears are here, and on the camera, bears had been there every few hours there'd been a bear. So I was like, well, I'm going to see a bear tonight.
Good.
So,
Good.
and I was planning on sitting until, next day was Memorial Day. I had all night to sit if I needed to. I was going to sit till 4 or 5 if I had to. And so I'm pick up my book, reading. About 9, I don't hear anything. Black bears don't usually make a lot of noise. I don't hear anything. I look over and it's kind of clear on the right side, and I see black bear walking in, little bear, and he comes over, sits down, eats for 20, 30 minutes, and then starts running around, like walks away, plays with some stuff that's sitting around the bait station, walks off, and then I just about jump out of my stand when I hear a bear blow right behind me and run off, and it's this little bear, and it just was like walking back and forth around behind the bait, not looking at me, not paying any attention to me.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm like testing it with my like jerky chew cans, like popping them open and getting some jerky chew out of there just to see if he wouldn't pay any attention to me at all. I'm pulling like stuff out of my plastic bag, my snacks out and chewing on them with him walking around the bait. Didn't care that I was there. Anyway, I finally gave up on watching him walk around and got back to my book. And I just shifted just a little bit. Just like, that little bit of a like, but's getting a little numb.
Are you using one of the smaller stands this year?
Kind of. It's not like a full like Comfort King, but it's Helium Hawk, I think.
Okay. No, does it have a shooter's rail or
no shooter's rail?
Okay.
I wouldn't mind if the platform was a little bigger, but it's big enough. Like my feet sit on it comfortably and fully on it.
They're not like right underneath your butt or anything.
Not
like that.
quite like that. No, and it's got a full nice big butt. Spot, and it's got about 10 inch back, which is really all you need.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not a full lean back, but it's everything it's most comfortable stand I've had.
Yeah.
And it's the one I could find local when I wanted one a couple years ago.
That's the hard thing is finding them local.
Ordering them.
The shipping on those things when you try to order them is insane, dude.
Well, yeah.
Dude, they're heavy.
If you can find them, like the Comfort Kings or like what I really want is what my dad has is some Millenniums, which those are like $300 a piece. But
they're nice though.
My goodness, those are the nicest stands I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're worth the $300.
What kind of makes those stand apart from other stands?
From like the Comfort King?
Yeah, like
they're lighter.
Oh,
they're the same size overall. I don't think they have a shooter's rail, so that's if you want a shooter's rail, which obviously you could fab something.
I thought
yourself
they came optional with.
They
one,
might.
maybe.
They might.
Yeah.
But they fold up nice and easy, all that. But one of the biggest things is they're lighter. They're made out of aluminum, not steel. You can adjust the base of them for how far out from the tree it is. So if you're on a crooked tree or something, you can kick the
nice.
bottom kick the bottom in and out. And they come with, instead of most stands, you climb, you get your tree steps in or whatever you're doing. You climb up and you're doing the dance around the tree as it stand swings back and forth to get your strap tied on and strapped on.
Mm-hmm.
This stand comes with a block that you strap to the tree. You then climb down, grab your stand, pick it up, and set it.
And
it hooks into the block.
Yeah. That's the way to go.
What?
And then you can, if you want to, you can throw another strap on it.
Yep.
Which I usually double up my straps. Just helps me. It's just tighter.
So the
that way,
block
right?
is on a strap that goes.
Yep.
So you put that at height
Mhm.
where you want it,
Facing the direction
and
you
it
want
has like some sort of.
It's just got like a piece of square steel. I think stand just or not steel but aluminum slips right into. It's sweet.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said they're like $300. They're almost double the price of a Comfort King.
Yeah, but most good tree stands are $300.
You can mimic that with other hang-on tree stands. Like if you put either one of those steps on, or if you use like a little hook. Like I've used screw-in hooks before, but like
we've done that a lot.
The setup they come with, how it straps on, that's so much simpler. It's very
the
nice.
adjustability of them being able to kick them in and out and everything. Like,
can you do that after strapping it onto the tree?
What's that?
Like, can you strap it to the tree and then adjust it
I'm
to
sure
the
you
proper
can,
size?
yeah.
Like you don't have to like take it back down and move bolts and stuff.
I'm pretty sure it's just a pin or something. Yeah,
That's sick. I might have to look into one.
That
of those.
is sick.
like I said they're $300 a piece. That's why I don't have them yet. I've looked at them. I almost bought them this year early on. Like my dad ordered 2 last year because you can't get them local. He ordered 2 last year, and he got one almost right away, and the next one came like at the end of the season. It was just like
a lot of good that does me now.
or middle of the season, whatever it was.
Right.
It was just like it came like a month later for whatever reason.
Mm.
I don't know what it is with tree stands and even finding them available online, but
That's true.
maybe they're just popular when we're looking for them.
Yeah.
But anyhow, the Helium Hawk or whatever it was I was sitting in, I adjust a little bit. I'm plenty comfortable, and right as I adjust, I'm trying to pay attention, but I see like a dark spot behind, and it's real tight right behind my bait stand,
As
or
it
my
should
bait
be.
station, and
barrel.
I see a dark spot, and out of the peripheral vision, and I see it move, and I hear just pounding on the ground and, huffing. And it's like, okay, that's a big bear. It's not like this little one gave me a heart attack a few minutes ago that now I'm just like, yeah, whatever. It likes to run 10 feet and turn around and look again, which, I figured it was scared of another bear or something.
Yeah. I would say that's the behavior of a adolescent or smaller bear.
Right. And it had been, that small one had been like, it wouldn't go behind the bait station or lower on the hill than the bait station. It came in from behind on my right and it left behind on my left, and it was back and forth and around me the after that. Wouldn't go below. And it was looking that way all the time.
Think that big one was just camped out back there?
It camped out, or it'd kicked it out of there before.
Right.
And anyhow, as soon as that thing ran off, I tucked the book under the stand and sit up and all careful and quiet now. And usually I try to be anyway, but and it was to the right behind the bait station, sitting there, walking down and back and forth and around, laid down over there for a while. Came back around, came in from the left side. Surprised me because I, walked around everything, and all of a sudden I look over and there it is, coming in like a cat, like a lot of black bears will, just like that, stepping real slow, looking back and forth with every step, just looks like a cat walking through the woods.
Yep.
And real skittish, like just real hyper vigilant. They say they don't get big for, they don't get big because they're
hanging out in bait
right,
stations.
exactly.
It's not for no reason.
And anyhow, and he stayed behind this tree and these trees to the left of the bait station, to where and he wouldn't sit still, and every time he'd sit stop or anything, there's no opportunity for any kind of a shot. And I was like, if I just be patient, he'll come, he'll want it. And my good buddy Chris here, when he stopped, he gave me something. He gave me some sweets to throw out on the bait. He goes, they'll love this stuff. You gotta throw it out. You throw it on your bait, throw it around. They'll love this stuff. So I threw it around, and I took the little bag that stuff was in, and I just stuck it in the grease jug that I'd carried in with me. Just stuck it in the side of that with the cardboard there, and had that sitting to the side where they could play with it. Well, the little bear had played with the grease jug, and the sweet package had fallen on the ground there. And that big bear found that, licked out the inside, ate it. I don't know. Bears will eat anything. Just like dogs, You ever find your dog eating a stick in the yard, and you look at it like, do I not feed you enough food or anything? But apparently,
I've caught my dog eating a lot worse than a stick.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
I'm not going to go into detail, but
yeah.
Anybody who has had a puppy knows. In the wintertime.
But anyhow, yeah. But yeah, bear ate that thing, and that really got it wanting more of what that was. So it's licking off some of that stuff off the ground and sniffing.
A magic bullet.
And it walked right over to the bait after that.
Nice.
And laid right down where it didn't have a shot at all.
You love it when they do that.
I mean, that's pretty typical.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing with patience at a bear bait, is if you've got a bear in and he's getting ready to eat and he starts eating, just have a little bit of patience. Be ready, because when he stands up, especially if you're bow hunting, presents you with that shot, you got to be ready. Yeah. But I waited, and finally he sat down and laid down. When he stood back up, he put his head back down. I just brought my rifle up, and I had to hold it wait for 30 seconds. A lot easier than holding the bow open for 30 seconds.
Oh, sure.
Which I've done that too. But and just waited until he presented a nice, close enough to broadside shot, and shot him with a 45-70, 276 grain shock hammer. And he looked like he got shot, and ran 30 yards behind the bait station, piled up, and did the death moan. And
I wish there was a way to show the video
pumped. On the podcast?
On the podcast.
Well, if we get around to doing video podcasts, right?
Right. One of these days.
Right. Do it Joe Rogan style, just showing the
pictures. Because that was sick, the way he
forth.
jumped up like that,
right,
and kind of sidestepped.
Just a big ollie.
Like some Tony Hawk stuff.
Well, when you get hit with 276 grains going over 2,000 feet per second.
Yeah. That's a gnarly round coming out of that 45-70.
I was going to say, that's a light round. I bet that thing's
light,
smoking.
But it's smoking for a 45-70. Most 45-70, like your hard cast stuff, a lot of those are going 1,600 feet per second.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, it's kind of funny that he's on that same track. I've shot 300 grainers out of my 45-70 for a decade now. It's always for some reason, it's because they have that great intended purpose of the big cartridge shooting heavy bullets really slow, but man, the beauty of the 45-70 is when you lighten those rounds up, 300 grain, 276 grain, hammer even makes 250 grains for it. dude, you can get so much speed out of those things. It's insane. Like the trajectory gets flatter. Like it's still 45 caliber. It's still 45 caliber. So
you and I were talking about this at one point.
And big old entrance hole, big old exit holes. And like,
remember when I found that box on the floor in your truck?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, dude, you know what's up? Like, you had some light stuff? Because I run the 300s in mine too. And it's...
Well, you run those 325s.
It's awesome. What's that?
The 325s from Hornady? The flex lock ones or whatever?
No, these are 300 grainers. They're the same thing James rocks.
Yeah, before the hammers, they're the... it's a Federal...
Oh, okay.
I want to say they're Federal, but they're 300 grain bonded soft points.
Okay.
And they're nasty too. I mean, for what they are, but...
They got like a shallow hollow point kind of.
Yeah.
They're nasty though.
Dude, with those hammers, the shock hammers especially, like I can only imagine what that retained shank did after shedding those pedals on a 45 caliber, dude.
Oh yeah, blew about an inch hole. Had lungs poking through the exit hole. I mean, it was just the heart was split in half. I didn't even.
You told me about that.
It was crazy because where I hit it was far back from. I didn't want to hit the heart. You know, I like eating bear heart.
Bear heart's delicious.
And I didn't want to hit the heart. You know, but that's the thing when you're shooting with a rifle, you can't be so picky, I guess. But the lungs were gone, obliterated, and the heart was split in half. Like the top of it was just in half, like the point where I could have maybe got like, you know, a little nugget off the bottom of it or something.
Did it look like a pedal hit it, or like just the sheer concussion just like split?
Yeah, I think it was
a
combination.
Yeah.
There was, I had found right up against the outside of the hide, I'd found a chunk of copper pedal that I tried to save, but I'd stuck it on a bag that was out of the way. And then right when I was cleaning up at the end of the night, you know, after I'd packed everything out and was cleaning up the back, loading everything back into the backpack, and I grabbed the bag and flipped it over. I was like, oh no. And then I couldn't find the pedal. But at that point I was tired and didn't really care that much.
If it makes you feel any better, I lost a bullet that I shot an animal with in Africa. Very similar way. I was like getting everything packed up, and we got back to the American side, and I'm like, wait, where is it? Like, and it was...
There's a couple other smaller pieces of copper.
Dug it out from the other side of my Impala, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to put this right under the skull and have it on...
Right.
You know,
you don't know what happened to it?
No idea, dude. It's like, I could have swore I put it in my suitcase, but then it was like just gone.
That's so common. I've done that too. I've had bullets and I've lost. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to put this in a case. And, you know, they look all cool. You're like, I'm going to put this with that bear.
Yep.
I don't know. Like, where the heck?
I guess that'll kind of be the hard part about shooting soft targets like bears with hammers is you'll probably never recover a bullet out of them unless you shoot them lengthwise.
There's not much you're going to shoot with a hammer. You're going to recover the bullet.
Right.
Like,
right. I know they have recovered ones, but it's almost
you
always
shoot
a
bear in
lengthwise
a
shot.
Chest, maybe.
Right.
But so
like have it in the rear, like go from the chest to the rear hindquarters.
That was my second night I'd hunted. I hunted Friday night, but it just kept raining and I gave up. Because bears don't really move in the rain, and especially black bears. And I was tired of being wet, so. And I couldn't read, so I was bored out of my mind, you know. So I was packed up, went home, and then like, you know, I would look at the camera and a bear had come in 30 minutes later, but it was a small one. I didn't. You know, that's the thing with bear baiting and patience, right? A lot of guys, especially if you have a buddy that you say, "Hey, come up, I'll get you a bear," right? And the first thing that shows up is like 4.5, 5 feet. And you say, "You can shoot him if you want, but if you wait, you'll get a bigger one." Almost every time. I know this because my dad's had this happen time and time again with his family and people that have come up and hunted with him. Almost every single time, they'll shoot the first bear they see.
Yep.
And then what happens? They have one tag because they paid non-resident tag fees, right?
And then you get the big.
And then, my dad a couple of years ago had his brother-in-law came up. You know, my brother he shot like a 5-footer, and then my dad shot a 7-footer. The next night or the same night or something.
Of an interior bear.
That's insane.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest one my dad's ever shot. For sure.
That was a tank.
Yeah, for interior especially. Like, you know, I think my dad's beat me with two bears on my biggest one. But Chris has got me beat now. You guys, but yeah, 18 and 2/16 skull.
Nice.
And with big head on him.
Yeah,
big head,
big melon.
Yeah, because I mean, I shot the biggest bear I shot was 6'6". Nose tail 6'6" squared both. And
that's a tall bear.
It was only like,
or a wide one.
It was right at 17 or even under 17 inches. The skull was.
Your bigger one was?
The biggest bear.
Really?
And the next bear I shot, which I don't remember if it even quite made 6 feet. It may have been just over 6 feet. right at which is about the one I shot now. And I don't think it was quite 6 feet, but I shot the last one I shot was 6 years ago. I hadn't hunted for a while in between this one and that one, or hunted very hard. And
being a responsible family man.
Oh, I was trying to build a house.
Yeah,
it's expensive and time consuming.
Sometimes gets in the way of bear baiting,
but I still haven't finished it. I'm like, bear bait or finish the house. Bear bait, yeah.
There you go.
But that one had an even bigger skull than the biggest bear I shot, and that was a sow. I had a bigger skull than that boar, and then this is the biggest skull I've got on a bear.
I wonder if that's just genetics in the area.
That's what it mostly is. Yeah. I mean,
I see that a lot where the heads don't match the bodies and the bodies don't match the head.
I mean, the noggin on the one I shot was compared to the body was huge. Like it was a big bear. It was over 6 foot nose to tail and like 6'2.5" squared. But
nice. Now, really quick, I want to get into your bear, but before I do that, there's a really cool factor of where you shot this bear, and what happened there last year. So, go into a little bit
can we
about
go into that now.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just quickly.
So, I mean, if you guys have been listening to the podcast very long, you know that last year you heard my baiting stories. Like, yep, went and checked the baits again. No bears, or have grizzlies. Can't get them to come in while I'm there. Whatever it was. And this bait was the bait that no bears.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the season, a couple bears showed up, ate it out before I got back, and then it was end of season. Shut everything down. I hunted it once just because they might show up, right? And so this spring, I was hesitant to even bait it again. Like, is it worth it? Should I push it back further? Should I move it?
Yep.
And I finally decided, it's a fairly easy bait to get to. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it again. I'm by myself where I'm at. I'm going to do it again. So I baited it back up, and then, I had the first bear on it the 14th.
Nice.
And the cameras weren't quite set right, so I adjusted them.
Which is like over a month sooner than the last year. Yeah.
Yeah. A month and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost. And then I showed up a week later, and bears had hit it hard. And then a few days later, I killed one. And as of right now, I've still got the whole month of June to hunt.
Yeah.
Still put out another bait, and
you got almost 5 more weeks to fill 2 more tags. So
yeah. Well, if I put a bait in the right spot, maybe more tags, right?
Right. There you go.
And I can shoot a grizzly still.
Yeah, true.
But
no, that's a great testament though, because a lot of people, I mean, if they didn't have a black bear show up to the last week and they only came in and left and you never even saw when they're in person, like a lot of people just pull out and say, and you've talked about this before, Chris, too, a bait that you'd run that for 2 years had very minimal bear action, but you just stuck with it.
Not minimal, none
at all.
Yeah.
And then that third year, it just...
I have 2 baits like that have just been no bears. Any normal person would not stick around and invest time in that. But like, I've talked to guys that know a lot more about this than I do, and they're like, you already got a season into soaking that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Hit it again and see what happens, and you get bears.
Yeah,
it's and everyone's not going to be keen on doing that way. I mean, you're burning a tag on nothing going on.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But they're baits that are, I mean, they produce time and time again now.
Yeah.
I mean, in multiple bears.
I think the biggest part of it is bears they'll move through areas, but they know where food's at in the spring, and they go to where they've gotten food before. And, if you put a bait in it where there's no other baits, getting the bears from where the baits are to you can take some time.
Yeah.
I think that's what's with this bait. Like, I know where baits are at in the general area. I mean, I'm a long ways from them,
right?
But the bears aren't necessarily living in the valley I'm in, because there's food in the valley on the other sides, right?
Right. Yeah.
And now they're finding food here, and so I'm going to start getting my own collection of bears that are starting to start coming back.
Well, and the good thing about that too is if they're getting less bothered at yours, because you're one person versus, let's say there's 5 over here, and they keep getting pushed around over there by people coming in and bumping them and stuff like that, they're going to come to yours.
Yeah.
I mean, just hang out at yours because you're only there, 5 or 6 times.
I may have mentioned this before, but I've put baits in where there's other baits in areas where I know there's other baits, and just try to push back further. And you do all the hard work, harder work to beat everybody is the goal. And I mean, it bears within 24 hours.
Yeah.
Right, on a new bait, because they're in the area, so they smell. Ooh, that smells new. What's that? Let's go get some different food.
Right.
And yeah,
I have a bait that's like, it's pretty jumping, and I had some guys encroach, and I actually got a chance to kind of talk to them this couple weeks ago here now. And it's kind of funny because they're like, yeah, well, this spot sucks anyway. And it's just absolutely just pounded in bears.
You know, I think
it's just covered up in bears. And yeah, I'd really like to know more about why they'll just suddenly appear. But I think they just cover ground. I mean, their range is pretty large.
It is.
I think we forget that baiting because they find food and they lay up on it. But you got to think, I mean, I think I bred 70 square miles.
Oh, yeah.
And then you got to think too, like when boars start chasing sows and stuff, they're probably exceeding those boundaries a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And if they
pushing
find
into other country,
they find food in the process, and then that breeding season kind of dwindles off. I mean, they might be like, well, this is a good place to live.
Well, and we even had that one guy ask the question at the event, our bear baiting event this last spring, where it's like, if I have a big bear, at the bait and I shoot that big bear, is that it for that spot? Like, is that
no?
Did I just ruin it?
No,
absolutely not.
They're moving, like, and there's always new bears browsing around, and they're pushing each other out. And this big bear will push this other big bear out, but he'll find a smaller bear then he's the big bear in that valley, and and then all of a sudden it's
right.
You don't have to worry about that part. But
if you got a big bear that's real contentious, like killing that bear, it can actually increase the number of bears on your bait.
It can, yeah.
This one had a little bit of scarring underneath, like on its chest and on its neck and stuff like that. Just little holes, nothing crazy, but like you see on older, like you kill an older bear and the teeth are all worn and there's scarring all over its chest from fighting other bears and stuff. Like this one had a little bit, but I bet you that small one might have some fresh scars on.
Yeah, may have gotten nipped a time or two.
The way it was acting, like he'd come in and like spook and come in and spook, and then after a while, it was just gone. And that must have been when that other bear was coming in. But
guaranteed,
those small ones can run bears off too. It's kind of
they can get feisty. Yeah,
it depends on who runs the show. I mean, just because it's like anything else, just because you're big doesn't mean you're bad, right?
Right.
And I mean, those bears are struggling to survive, so you get a little scrappy bear that, I mean, can be bad for business.
Speaking of big bears, let's go into your story a little bit there. you got a pretty good tank, didn't you?
I think I was too sleepy to realize.
Well, you told the story really well earlier, so just rinse and repeat.
So rinse and repeat. Well, so
you still got blood on your hands, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I'm actually covered in blood right now. I actually left
getting it all over the microphones. That's perfect.
I left the garage to get my butt here. Yeah. So when I ran into Mo, I had a bunch. I had several bears about 2 weeks ago on my bait, and all of a sudden it went completely dry. And I'm like, are they chasing calves? What's going on? And so, and I've had this one dink that in all the bears, I had like a couple grizzlies, couple decent black bears, but this one dink just keeps hanging around like they do. And every time I go in, this is the bear I see. It's like, oh man. Like, so I had been seeing that bear, ran into you the other night, ran into you after you got your bear too, because I got my butt kicked. I went up, I didn't see anything. And I didn't even see that dink. I hadn't had that dink on for like 3 days, 4 days. Yeah, I hadn't had any action on my bait. It's just completely dry. And I talked to another buddy of mine he's a really avid bear baiter, really good hunter. And he's like, I don't have bears on my bait either. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe it's in the air. He's like, could be full moon. We just had a full moon week. I'm like, oh yeah, we did. It's like, could be. Maybe they're starting to drop, the moose are starting to drop calves. Anyway. So he kind of talks me into it again. He's like, well, you can't get them on the couch, like we always say.
Right.
And he's talking to me yesterday, and I'm kicking back, and we're hanging out in the yard. And my wife's like, she's like, you're losing it. You need to go. She's like, you just need to go. And I'm like, yeah, but it's just that. Yeah, just go. And I'm like, it's just that dink. And that dink, her and I went and sat last week, and that dink came in, and she was excited just to watch us see bears, and she doesn't get a chance to go out a lot. And I'm like, yeah, it's just that one little tiny bear that I'm feeding. And she's like, well, maybe get that one. Just get a meat bear. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, So she finally talks me into it. It's pretty late. It's like 9 o'clock, maybe like 8 o'clock. And I'm like, all right. So I get all my stuff together, hustle up. I go up there and I have one picture of that dink on there. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is insane. So I throw a little packet of the sweet mystery blend that I threw you. And I took some sow estrus stuff and sprayed that around and really like got it up high. And right about there, I'm like, I'm going to leave. This is pointless. I'm like, I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to just get tired. I'm going to go to bed late. This is pointless.
You know, one of the biggest parts of baiting is the mental game. Is that right there?
It's just like, it just beats on you.
4 to 6 hours of dead silence in the woods and just nothing's happening. And then it can all change just like that. Like,
and you know, like, do you ever do like the weird self-talk when you're in the tree stand too? Like you read everything you can read, like you just do everything you can do. And then you're just sitting there and you're like, just in your thoughts. And I'm like, you know what? That Grizz hasn't been here. You know, I might get a new Grizz. Oh, I'll be here the first time he shows up. Like just weird stuff, you know? You're just like, oh my gosh, this is getting ridiculous. So like nothing all night. I'm sitting there and I'm kind of in Grizz mode. I'm like, this is what I'm really hoping for. I'm like, I'm not going to move. I'm not going to make any noise. So I'm sitting there about 1:30 in the morning. Here comes that dink come walking up all just super sketchy, high alert, circle in, gets up to the bait, turns and just runs out of there. And I don't see that bear again. Like 5 minutes later, this monster of a bear, I don't know how big, comes rolling out of the trees on my right side, the uphill side of where that dink took off to. He comes walking down, stands in the bait station, and I'm like, yes, no way. I get the rifle ready, pop the safety off, and I have no shot opportunity. And I'm like, come on, this thing just looks right up at me, turns around and walks away. And I'm like, it'll come back. It'll come back. It'll come back. It goes up in the trees like 30 yards and I can just see it like milling around. Then it starts breaking stuff and it's like blowing off and making all this noise. And I'm like, what are you doing? So, and my patience are just wearing at this point. I'm like, man. And I'm like, this bear's not going to come back in. And then all of a sudden I see it just like start wandering away. And here comes this other bear, comes running up into the bait station. And he's like huffing off, blowing off, stomping, making all this racket. And then I see that big bear run away. And I'm like, well, shoot, now this smaller bear's running this bear off. And I'm like, man, this is ridiculous. And I'm like, this bear's way smaller than that bear. I wanted to shoot that big bear. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sit here. That bear like takes off and it runs probably like 30 yards back, creeping back up. And it's not really giving me a view. And the other one's long gone. I could hear it breaking stuff way up high. And I'm like, that bear's not going to come back. And I'm like, I can't believe this little bear just ran. So the dink ran off. This little bear comes in, runs this big bear off. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm like just ready, almost to the point where I'm like, I'm just going to crawl down and leave. I don't even care. I'm just going to walk past this bear and go home.
Now, these two, is it the first time you've seen these ones? Like,
I've never seen these bears at all. At all. The only one I've seen is the dink. And I'm like, you know what? That's a nice bear. I'm just going to shoot that bear. It's time to shoot a bear. Don't be greedy. I'm going to shoot this bear. So he barely clears his front shoulders and he's like doing the spoopy thing. He's not even eating, doesn't care about anything, but he knows, and he's looking right up at me too. He knows I'm there. And so I just kind of follow this tree that he's sitting behind. And I'm like, I'm just going to trace that tree and just hit him in the lungs. I don't even care. I'm over it. I'm going to kill this bear. And so I just let one rip and he goes, walks off basically, like does that initial, like I'm hit, the action, throws the front leg up, and then like comes back down and just kind of casually like runs off. And I'm like, I didn't just miss that thing, did I? And so I'm like, okay. I sit there. I'm like, I'm not gonna jump this bear. I'm gonna give it time. He's gonna death moan on me. I'll go down, get him, or maybe I didn't get him, and I'm just starting to go through it all. I'm like, I don't think I hit this bear.
That's the worst time right there.
Yeah, or I'm like, or I made a bad hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've only had one bear not death moan in my whole time of hunting bears, and it was a head-on shot. And this bear just went out on its legs. Like I hit him head on, center punched him. He fell, didn't even let a breath
just
out.
Lights
just
out.
Done.
Yeah.
Yep. Right there. Like 20 feet away. And so I'm like, this isn't good. I walk back there. I come down. I give it about half an hour. And I'm just losing it the whole time. I'm like, oh, just give it a little longer. I'm being quiet. I'm not rustling in my gear because I don't want to miss any noise. And, so I give it about a half an hour, crawl down out of there. I go look and I can't find him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh. And
that's that gut wrenching feeling.
Yeah,
right
just
there.
horrible, And so I go, I'm combing about a 50-foot radius or a 50-yard radius within the bait. And I'm like, there's no way. Like if I would have hit that bear, he'd be dead. So I see this one tree that's got enough limbs and I can see this little like clearing. And I was like, I'm going to climb up this tree and have a look. And I shed all my gear, climb up this tree. And I'm not real fond of heights, that, James. But I'm like, I don't care. I'm so like bent out of shape at this. I'm like broken in my head, right?
You'll do amazing things when you're looking for an animal.
I went like 16 feet up in that tree, like just scale that thing.
And you probably didn't even think about the heights. No, so locked in.
No.
Like.
And this is the best part. You're right, dude. So I get up and I look out like another 40 yards and that bear's piled up. And then I go to get down.
And that's when it hits you.
Dude, I can't figure out how to get down. I'm all excited. I'm like, yes. And I can still hear these other bears. Now I hear like the other bear that I think that big one, like breaking stuff off in the distance. And I'm just all pumped. And I'm like, okay, I got to get down. I'm like, this is how people get hurt. And I'm like, I'm way nestled back here. I fall out of this thing. People are going to come in there and be like, oh, he's not here. This isn't where he is.
I know, right?
I'm back here. No, so I was super stoked. Go up, check him out, throw him in the otter sled, pull him out of there, get home, get him all broke down, skin him out, lay him out, and I'm just shot at this point. It's like, it's like 9:00 and I'm just ready to go to bed. So I go to bed, can't sleep like 3 hours. And I'm like, I got to dive back into this.
Yeah.
So, get a hold of one of our buddies and I'm like, hey man, can you help me flesh this thing out, get it? He's like, yeah, come on over. He says, I'm just hanging out. Absolutely, man. I'll give you a hand. So we like go over there and he's like, oh yeah, it's like, I don't think it's a real big bear, but I'm stoked on it. It's a bear, nice hide. He's like lugging it around. He's like hefting this thing. He's like, dude, what's up with this thing? I'm like, yeah, it's kind of heavy, huh? We're yarding on this thing. He's like, man, we're both trying to move it around to hang it up. And he's like, this is a good bear. And he just keeps saying that. He's like, this is a good bear. I'm like, well, you're making me feel pretty good about this thing, man. And I didn't really think much of it. And I have never been able to figure bears out on the ground. Like I'm going to be the first one to admit it.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot gauge size on bears. I've had buddies. They give me like a bunch of credit when we're in base stations. They're like, you know what's up, man. I'm like, I don't. And I don't want this on my conscience. Like, if this isn't the bear you want, I don't want to carry this around, dude. Like, you got to make your own judgment call. Like, I suck at this. Like, come on.
Well, and you'd made some good pointers as far as like having the lodge poles, cut to certain lengths and stuff like that, engaging that. But like when they're on the ground like that, when you let the air out of them, it's hard to tell sometimes.
Dude, well, and when they're standing, that's one thing I will say. The bear that this smaller bear spooked, the one I shot, was a huge bear.
Yeah.
That was unreal. Like I was like, okay, that's nuts.
Like compared to this one that you
the
shot?
one that I shot, that bear that spooked leaps and bounds bigger than this. It made this bear look small.
And what this one turned out to be?
So before I came to the studio, we hadn't got done flushing all the way or anything. And I was like, hey, let's put a tape on this because the boys are going to want to know, And he's like, oh, yeah, okay. So he pulls his tape out, throws it on there. And it was just right over 6'7" from nose to tail.
Man.
And I'm like, he's like, dude, this is a good bear. He's like, this thing, dude, once this thing settles out, I mean, you might get like couple more inches, man. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what? We like spread it out on his garage floor. Dude, it's a nice bear.
Did you still have the skull in it at that point, you said?
Oh, we got the skull out.
You got the skull out. Okay.
I don't know how big the skull is. I haven't measured the skull yet. It looks like a pretty good noggin. I got like pretty big mitts.
Yeah.
And I had that picture that I sent you this morning with my head on, or my hand on its head. That kind of made me reevaluate. Like when I looked at that again, I was like, dude, my hand doesn't look very big on this bear. Pictures are deceiving.
Yeah, that was the first thing I noticed in that picture you sent me was because, I mean, you can play with pictures and different angles and stuff and make it look bigger than it was.
Oh, yeah, and I got my wife down there. She's like on her way to work. She's like, dude, let's get this over with. Come on. Because she's like, yeah, I know. You want me to take pictures? I'm like, yeah, you two come to I got it all propped up. She's like, let's go. Come on, go. We'll do whatever you're going to do. And she's like got the low angle. And I'm like, yeah, babe, back there. Push it back a little bit. Yeah, like guys, they push him back to get up. Yeah, right there. Yeah, does it look big? Okay, cool. And then like it didn't even come out that great. But then I was looking at my hand on that thing. I was like, dude, this thing's got a melon on it, and I got like pretty big. It's got a
nice melon on it.
I don't know what it measured. I'm not there yet, but
yeah.
But dude, when we rolled that thing out on the garage floor there, we were both like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's going to square pretty decent too. I was stoked on it.
That's awesome, dude.
So yeah, that's the biggest bear I've ever shot.
And for anybody listening, this is so recent that Chris literally called me before the recording. He was like, dude, I'm going to be late. I'm still fleshing this bear out. That's why I'm giving it crap out of him.
I got to go back while we're done.
Just actively fleshing this bear.
Well, then I was like, dude, don't salt this thing because I want to measure it before it like
shrinks up.
Yeah, because I think it's pretty decent. And and I've shot a good handful of bears, but I've never really shot big bears. I've shot like barrel chested bears, like fatties, like bears I'm proud of. But I mean and it's so weird. And even in those bears, I'm like, these are big bears.
Yeah.
And then this one, I'm just like, durr.
Well, it's funny.
And then we're like looking at it. I'm like walking around this thing on like the garage floor there. I'm like, holy smokes. Like kind of, and it made me think too, like the guys just do this all the time. Right. I'm like, dude, this is incredible.
Yeah. The one I shot was, just over 6 foot, which is big bear.
That's a huge bear.
That's a good bear. Yeah.
And, I haven't shot, I think I've shot 3 under 6 foot and probably 3 over. I think the one I shot last before this one, I don't remember if it was over 6 foot or not.
Well, and that's for anybody baiting in the interior. I mean, 5.5 is a
5.5
adult bear.
Yeah,
like,
real decent.
Yeah.
But what was deceiving about this one is it didn't have a big belly on it, right? Like a lot of times you've got that big butt and that big belly, and that you see that with a big head, and you think, all right, that's a big mature bear. There's a lot more that goes into it than, you see, okay, ears aren't set close together. They're far apart. The head looks round, not like a dog shape, right? Like all those things compound. Oh, yeah.
Yours had a nice
My head looks almost just as big as the one on your bear.
Yeah.
Dude, yours looked big. Everything about it.
Right.
That bear looked big.
But it was just a little more lanky.
Right. Well, it looked like it, but then that thing had 1.5 inches of fat on the quarters and, tons of meat. And
that's the thing I'm excited for what both of you guys have said is there was a lot of fat on both of you guys.
I've never seen that much fat on bears
on a spring bear.
Ever.
I have, but not in a long time.
I wonder if that has to do with the winter we had, like
light winter.
Again, a little bit more mild.
What's weird too is like because we were just pulling gobs of fat off this thing. There's probably spots where there's 2 inches of fat.
Yeah,
and I skinned it pretty rough. Like because I was trying to get it done, and I'm like, dude, I need to hit the hay here. We'll deal with this later. And boy, did we. But we had a 5-gallon bucket sitting there. We're just filling this 5-gallon bucket up. So like he's running the draw knife and I'm just cutting all the stuff off like with a skinning knife, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of keep like getting ahead of him so he's not fighting all that. And we're just filling this 5-gallon bucket up. And I'm like, if you think about a 5-gallon bucket with like something heavy in it, I'm like, that's probably a lot of this, us having a hard time yarding this thing around in here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Credit to those guys that just do that all the time. They just shoot big, hefty bears like that. Jeez.
Well, and you got almost 2 gallons off yours, right?
Close, yeah.
Just about, yeah. That's crazy. That's so cool.
And that was like clean fat in a bag, right? Like, a little bit of
trimmed up,
pretty much. I mean, there's a little bit of trimming to it before I render it down, but
yeah, but you almost want some of those cracklins in there.
Oh, I want the cracklins for sure. There was a little bit of
especially bear cracklins, dude.
There was a few spots with
so good.
A few spots with a few pieces of leaves or whatever. But
dude, once you get those strained off the top, put them in a bowl, a little bit of salt right on the top.
Oh, you don't need the salt, dude.
You don't need it, but I'm a saltaholic, bro.
Okay.
Like I put salt on everything.
I put
Old Bay, dude.
Oh, dude, yeah.
I took like a 1-inch.
Bro.
Old Bay, dude.
Old Bay on the bear cracklins, dude.
So get ahead of things just a little bit here. I took about a 1-inch chunk of the fat, just grabbed the bag because it's in the fridge right now, before we can render it down sometime this week, and took that, threw it in the middle of a frying pan, kept it on low, and then once it rendered down a little, diced it up into little pieces, so obviously it renders a lot faster that way. And then I took like 4 pieces off of the small end of the back strap, just fried those up.
That's what that picture is that's on the Instas,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, I put that on
that
Instagram.
looked so amazing.
And so last night I just ate those cracklins that were left, and then ate that. Didn't put any seasoning at all.
Yeah, you don't need it. I just like the extra salt.
To me, if you can kill an animal and then cook it, and at max use some salt and pepper.
Yeah,
it's just you get better flavor out of that. Then
that's what I love about like moose camp.
Yeah,
is when you get fresh moose backstrap and you're just throwing it right over the fire and everything, like salt and pepper minimum, and you just get that nice fresh, never
One
frozen.
thing with moose backstrap is you can get like nice pieces of it.
That's true.
Bear backstrap's good, but it isn't. You don't get those nice smooth pieces of meat, right?
No, it's all jagged.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just never, no matter how hard I work.
This thing had nice backstraps on it, but they were.
I bet.
One of those white tables. They were the full length of the table. I'm sure you got bigger ones than that on yours if it was 6'8", but.
Dude, that meat was so heavy.
I'm sure.
I hung that in the shed this morning, and I was like, cut the step ladder, and I was like going up this, like trying to be all like, yeah, I hold this thing out, like just like shaking going up the step ladder. I'm like, dude.
To the victor goes the spoils. Let's take a break real quick.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
Congrats to both of you guys again on your kills. But to continue both of your stories, you both obviously got bears, brought them back to the house, got them processed. Let's digest that a little bit more because you both used different methods to get your bears out of the woods. So a little bit about how you did it and why you chose that way. So Mo, why don't you start?
All right. Well, we were talking a little bit about this before we went on the break. I've, killed enough bears and take them out of the woods about as many ways as you can. Although I haven't done it the way Chris did, but I'll let him get into that. That sounds like it would work pretty well. But anyhow, I've it was wheeler bait I was on, and a lot of times when you're on a wheeler bait, the easiest thing to do is gut it, throw it on the wheeler, drive home, right?
Yep.
Load a truck, go home, unload it, take care of it there. Though a lot of times you're dirt tired by the time you get home, so taking it apart, it's slower, and it's like, what, I'm by myself. I'm just going to take it apart. Like, may as well just do it while it's warm, while it's easy, bag it up. It'll be easier to deal with from now on if I just do it now.
Yeah, the sooner you do it, the easier.
Granted, I don't have grizzlies on my bait and other big bears breaking stuff around me and all that. Although I have cut up bears on baits with kind of stuff going around.
It's nice when you got two people when you're doing that.
Yeah, a lot of times you have two people, right?
Yeah.
Now I was watching and paying attention and listening, and I had my rifle next to me all the time, ready to reach out and grab.
Yep.
But I cut it up, skinned it out. Been a long time since I've skinned a bear out at a bait. And so I'm sitting there going, okay, cuts. Where do I make these cuts again? That's right. Okay, this is familiar. Got home and I was like, where do you make all these cuts again? He described it to me. I was like, well, that's exactly what I did. All right, good.
Isn't it weird how that happens? We were talking about that before the show started, how like you could have done something 100 times and then but you start to do it and you second guessing yourself. And
it's not been this long since I'd shot a bear, but it'd probably been 10 years since I'd done that myself. Like, somebody else is there and cutting it away or whatever, right? So like, it'd been a long time.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, oh, this is what I remember. So I did it all and it was all just right. But skinning it out and then, trying to cut the hands off at the bottom of the leg with the hide on and everything by yourself without, I didn't rope it to a tree or anything and just thinking, I'll just do it. And it was a pain. It took me about 2 hours to break it all down.
Oh yeah.
Skin it out and quarter it up. And
yeah,
I didn't clean anything off the rib cage. I just threw it in a game bag, threw it on the wheeler. Like I'm at a wheeler. If I was packing it out, I definitely wouldn't have done that. But
did you leave the head in while you were out there?
In the hide? Oh yeah.
It's
okay, not. Yeah. It's not worth the effort. If I'm going to if I'm not going to do I'm not going to turn the toes out there. No reason to bring the head in, right? And, broke it down quarters and, there's backstrap and a lot of guys don't worry about the tenderloins because on a bear, they're real full of sinew and stuff. But I mean, why not?
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of fat on it too. So I grabbed the rib cage and threw that in a bag and loaded it up on a wheeler. And
what kind of bags were you using?
I was using the 60-inch club bags.
Yeah. With the elk and caribou one?
Yeah, elk and caribou bags, and they work good for that. And I had 4 of them in there. I think that I'd used some of the other ones for something else and hadn't put them back yet. Probably for the deer this past winter.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, and yeah, worked great. And
that handle really helped you get it up on the wheeler?
Yeah, actually, well, that torso on that thing was long, so being able to put both hands on that thing was nice. Of course, I was 30 yards from where I parked the wheeler, so
yeah.
Sometimes bear runs far enough, you cut a few things, so you could drive right up to it. But this time I was like, whatever, I'll just haul the stuff over to it. It's not that much. Not gonna be that bad. If I had gonna bring the bear out whole, I would have. But
right.
The other reason I didn't bring the bear out whole was the last time I did that. It was a fatter, heavier bear than this one was, but I had gutted it. Took me a lot of work, but I finally got it up on top of the wheeler by myself on the other one, on the front. Wrapped it all down. I didn't want to put it on the back because I had to climb uphill all the way out.
Gotcha, yeah.
And so I didn't want to,
throw that balance off.
Exactly. It would not have been a good day.
A little passenger action.
Ever ridden a wheeler up a hill and, weights off, whatever, and it just stands right up on you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a reason my wife won't go up certain hills.
Or if you're going downhill and you're front heavy,
it's
the other way.
I almost think that's freakier because then you're facing down. It's
Dude, I had a situation with my buddy like that one time where I put all my gear on the front because we were climbing all day.
Yeah.
And him and his wife, they were like leading. They went down this super steep draw. And I look up ahead of me and he had kicked her off. And she's like running downhill and he's like working this hill. I start going. I did like a nose manual all the way down this hillside on the wheeler. Like just literally both front tires. Mm-hmm. Like I never put the back tires down the whole way.
Yeah.
And all my gear, I was super front heavy and it freaked me out.
Yeah. I did one on a caribou where that shale broke loose underneath the tires. And so you're sliding, and then you finally catch. And as your front tires catch, your rear tires come up and it's just the pucker factor is real, dude.
I had one of those situations. I didn't have weight on the wheeler, thankfully, but I had we'd gone up where you could see the tire track. We were looking for this trail around a mountain. And we couldn't find it, but while looking for it, we were like, oh, these tire tracks go up this way. Maybe it's up here. We get up there, big area. You could drive around, but you can't go anywhere. Everything's too steep. So, all right, well, let's turn around and go back. We get back to the top, and there's no tire track. Like, they kind of petered out at the top. So I was like, well, I think it's here. I'll go first, and I'll wave at you if it's good or not. Because it was far enough away, we couldn't hear each other. And, no, this is pretty long, pretty steep. So I start down. And everything's all right till I get close to the bottom. It just gets really steep. The shale starts getting really big. Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to I'm trying to just let it roll and only hold enough brake to not turn sideways. It started to turn sideways on me. And I'm just like letting off and it's straightening out and then there's all these bushes at the bottom. And I'm thinking there's probably like a fall off right at the bushes.
I was like at least 10
and so
feet.
then I'm like waving and yelling like over here. Anyway,
Fun times.
this, a little bit of a rabbit trail there, but so I put that bear on my other wheeler, on the brute force. I've been through a lot, and I had a mile uphill from that bait to the main trail.
Oh wow!
And so I, just slowly climb out with that thing. Wheeler did great, all that, and I used to say, man, I love that wheeler. And now that I've been riding that Can-Am around, I still like the brute force, but it doesn't have the same appeal to me it used to. That Can-Am's nice. It's like luxury. But anyhow, rode to the truck with it on the front. Everything seemed good, right? And that's actually not the first time I've done that. I've done that on other wheelers with other bears on the front like that. And that was probably the heaviest one. I think was probably upwards of 300 pounds. And that's a good conservative guess, I feel like. But get to the truck. I think I left it on the wheeler, loaded up in the truck, headed home. Unloaded the wheeler, pulled it up to the garage, opened the garage door, and flopped the bear out into the garage, right? And, but went out not that much later to go riding. And something was weird. Like, I kept getting stuck in weird spots I wouldn't have gotten stuck in before. And I hadn't paid a lot of attention. And get back, and my dad's looking at it like, something's just wrong. He looks up under there. I should have, but he looks up under there, and my shock mounts were broken off and sitting in the plastic.
What?
Yeah, so it was so much weight and stress and bouncing out. Yeah, I mean, the older wheeler and all that stuff, right? And
good bear.
A good bear, yeah.
A lot going on there.
After that,
that's when you know it's a good bear, when it breaks your wheeler.
You're just like I broke parts. That's how I know how big this was. Are you sure it's as big as you think it was, dude? Oh yeah.
I can show you the welds.
Right, exactly.
Which I was looking at the other day, and I might need to strengthen some of that. Go in there and grind some of that off and straighten some of it back up. Some of it looks like it's coming apart again, but that was years ago. But anyhow, so with that experience, I just bought this brand new Can-Am, and while I think it would handle it, I'm not willing at this point to do that to it.
Give it a few years of abuse first.
This is a nice machine, and they're not gonna. I go in there with a warranty. Oh, it's warranted, and they're gonna look at that and say, "Yeah, what'd you put on this thing?" Right?
I mean, if you tell them a bear, they might just think that's a cool enough story to be like, "Yeah, okay, that's warranted." Yeah,
no, that's not the way warranties work.
Right? Exactly.
Anyway, so I cut it up, put it on the wheeler, and ride out, and used that nice basket once again. That was sweet.
I was gonna say you I don't know if you posted the picture or you sent me the picture, but either way, it looked like it all tucked in real nice in there, real nice.
A big bear and just went right on that wheeler. Could have fit two on there easy.
Dude, I gotta find some baskets like that because that's always the biggest frustration, right? Is when you're trying to strap everything down. Talk to my wife. She'll determine if I have Can-Am money or not.
I had one guy.
Well, baby, Mo said I needed it. So.
Right.
Short answer, no.
I know.
I was working on a job, and we had this guy's doing concrete. The foreman of the job I don't know, got into him talking about he was talking about investments and stuff like that. And he was talking about buying a new truck, and he goes, it's just another payment. That's the way you got to think about it. It's just another payment. And he was dead serious. Like, it's just another payment, whatever. Of course, he makes gobs and gobs of money.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Probably works 100 hours a week in the summer up here. And I was like, I joke about that now. It's just another payment, right? But at
the end of the day,
you do enough of those, and you don't have any money.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But anyhow, got it back to the truck, went home, hung it up in the shed, hung the meat in the shed, spread the hide out in the shed, so it wouldn't, just safe. Went home, went inside, finished editing the podcast. Monday morning at this point, 4 a.m. So you all could get your
get your kicks.
Yeah. And went to bed about 5, slept till like 9, and then I woke up to kids playing and screaming and everything in the living room, and
as they do.
Yeah, as they do, and tried to go back to sleep and drifted in and out, and then I probably sat in bed just looking at posting stuff on my phone for a while there, and I'm not expected to get up, so I'm just going to enjoy this for a minute. And then I finally get up, go get, load everything back up and head over to my dad's house. He's got the whole shebang for butchering and everything. And so I get in there and I pull up to the house. I unload the bear and stuff out of the truck, and I'm just
red-eyed and
just sitting there like, how am I going to cut this thing up today?
Like I am right now.
Yeah, like you are right now. So I told my sister I had kids with me, and I dropped them off, and my sister was there, and I said, all right, I'm going to run to the gas station. I'll be right back. So I run to the gas station, energy drink, some food, stuff, come back, start pounding that, and got a little bit of juice back in me, and
yeah, buddy.
went to work on it. And I don't know how long that took me to do, but in the woods, I spent about 2 hours from when I cut to packing it into the game bags.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, I think, what anybody should expect, especially doing it solo.
And I was kind of thinking, man, this is taking a long time. And I got home the next day. My dad was there, and he said, I said, man, it took me a while. He goes, yeah, I usually should take about solo. It takes about 2 hours. And I was like, oh, that makes me feel good.
Well, you got to think. I mean, even if you have 550 cord,
if the guy that skinned 30 of these things says it takes 2 hours,
exactly,
right. Now, 2 guys who are experienced at it can do it about 45 minutes.
Right. One guy's holding the leg, the other guy's skinning it out. But the thing is, it's like, when you're alone, even if you have 550 cord and can tie it off to a tree or something to keep those arms wide, like it's still, I mean, if you're doing a proper skinning job and being careful and not putting holes in the hide and everything, I mean, it takes some time. I mean, there's nothing quick about it, and it's arguably better to take your time than to do a rush job and regret it later.
That's why, like, if I got the weather working to my advantage, and that's like, you got to think. So I left last night. Right now, right, and I'm still awake. Like, I slept probably 2.5 hours total since then. If it's cool, like, get it home and work on it on your time. Like, if the weather gets any better, I wouldn't do it the way that I do it. Pulling it out.
Yeah, when the weather gets hot, hauling it out whole can be risky. But
then the bugs start getting to it and everything.
But I took my time to do it right. I didn't go crazy, but like I said, thought long and hard. And like, Lord, where are these cuts at? I'm like sitting there like, where do I want to make these? Like, I'm not going to do anything with it, but I still want to do it right. Well, I'm supposed to be the experienced guy here.
Right.
And,
and everything about it. I mean, even like you said, cutting the hands off, I mean, when you've got the hide on the back side of the hands and you're trying to get that joint separated, one slip of that knife and you could ruin that.
You can usually skin it around, but the problem is it's just like the hide keeps getting in your way and everything's greasy because bears are greasy and you're trying to hold on to it and hold it in just the right position and still cut it, and then the knife's getting dull, so you're grabbing the sharpener. And
there's a lot of steps to it.
Yeah, but I put one hole in that hide, skinning it out. That wasn't turning toes or anything, but one hole, and I don't remember where it was, and it wasn't very big, but and it was fairly clean skinned. I mean, there's still a little bit of fat on there. Honestly, I'm probably going to cut. There's few spots. There's a little bit of that flank meat and stuff that gets on there.
Yeah.
I'll probably cut that off and call it like it was good enough. I'm not going to even flesh it out very much. I'm not going to do any. I mean, yours was big enough. You're probably going to mount it, huh? Or rug it. You should.
Well, I didn't think I was going to do anything with it, so now I got to figure it out.
You should rug that thing, dude. That thing's massive.
And it's funny too because because it. Now in my mind, I'm just going to tan them and hang them, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm doing.
Or gift them. Like, that's what if someone's really stoked on them, that's the way I am with all my stuff. Like, it drives my wife nuts.
Man, I love your 375.
What's that?
I said I love your 375.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real nice.
You want it? But no, so, that's, and kind of to your cut, the point you made about making the proper cuts, right? So because I brought mine home whole, I rolled it out with a otter sled, so it had like a little bit of the rigmarole going on, right? So it's a little harder to manipulate. It's not limber like in the bait station, and so I was like kind of having to imagine, and I did pretty good. I was like, wow, these cuts are super symmetrical. But and I'm glad I did that just by chance. Now I might want to rug it. Like, I don't know.
I mean,
my wife, she's like, rug it.
It's one of those things. Like,
it'll look nice.
Once you kill like enough animals, like, it's nice to have some mementos. It's like I had a buddy back in the day who was like, dude, your first bear, you got to rug your first bear. And I understand that, but it's like,
I did,
it's like, if that's what you're into, sure. But like, I'm not going to rug my first bear that's a 5.5 foot bear. It's once I get that 7 footer or 6'8" or something like that, whatever is like my milestone of like, that's a good presentation. Like, then I'll rug that, but I think it's important to keep some mementos. Honestly, I really do. I think I also really enjoy my wife's getting into fursuing, and I think it'd be awesome if you can get a bear that still has its undercoat on, like early season some year.
Yep.
Like trying to make some stuff out of bear skin. I think that would be awesome to do. Like just like a pair of
like that little one I took to the event.
Yeah,
that one. Like that's a small bear, but that fur is just unbelievable.
Well, and you could make like a like even for sitting predator hunting, you know, like a little Arctic mittens or something like that,
yeah,
or like
dude.
you know, and if it still has all that undercoat on there, that thing will be so warm. Like you're just sitting there waiting for animals to come in, and you're just sitting there with your hands getting warmed up in bear skin. Like, I mean, that's how cool is that, man?
A buddy of mine had.
I just
had
find
like
that awesome. Like
a buddy of mine. Yeah, so do I. That's cool, dude. A buddy of mine had like some hides that he had done. Like he had a lady put fleece on them, and they're just blankets. Like, and I remember we were visiting him, and I started like racking out on the couch, and he's like, "Grab one of those," and I'm like, "Grab one of what?" He's like, "One of those, right?" I'm like, "I'm not gonna put a bear hide on me, dude." He's like, "Dude," he's like, "Shut up and grab that thing." I like grab it. I'm like, "Whoa, what the heck?"
Yeah.
And he just rough skin, tanned, like garment tanned, and then he had some gal fleece into it.
Yeah.
Like, dude, this is awesome.
That's
and he's
so
like,
cool.
yeah, he's like, just shut up and listen, man. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cozy. He's like, yeah, you should do that with all those bears. I'm like, dude, no, I don't have big bears like this to make blankets out of. Like,
right. We put a couple together, right?
Just make a blanket out of that bear.
There you go.
There you go,
dude.
I don't know. I like a big bear rugged on the wall. Just something about it.
Yeah.
I grew up with my dad had a big bear rugged on his wall, and there's just looking at that, and it's
and that's what I mean. Like there's certain like representations of the species, like that beaver, right? Big old beaver. Like I was all like, you know, ready to just make something out of that. Like, same thing, like Arctic mittens or like some, you know, boots, something. But it's like, dude, that thing like barely fit on a 4-foot piece of plywood. Like, you know, like that's a good beaver. Like, you know, so it's like same thing. It's like, okay, if that one ends up on the wall, that's a perfectly good use for that hide. You know, that's like how I see it. Like that's like I look at that every day, and I'll remember that trip and that, you know, adventure, whatever you want to call it.
I got I have a red fox that I snared one year, and it's like 5'2" nose to tail, right? And
5'2",
yeah, dude. I'll show it to you one of these times. It's freaking huge.
That's a grandpa,
dude. We had to. I remember when I got it, I took it over to Al over there, and he helped me skin it out and whatever. And he took it and dumped it on a fox stretcher, and it just fell over the fox stretcher. That like, and he was like, okay. So he went and got he found a coyote stretcher board, and then put 2 belly boards on both, one on each side, because just to take that slop up, it was that big. And then I shot one of those silvers in Kodiak. And Ben was like, dude, this thing's huge. And I come home, that one I got here is bigger than that Kodiak fox.
Really?
Yeah. And everyone was like blown away in Kodiak about that fox. They're like, oh, that's a good fox, dude. You should be proud of that. This red fox that I got.
I got to see that one, dude.
It's a red coyote. That's what that is.
I was going to say, yeah, that's a hybrid you found.
Dude, it is huge. And I remember the year I had that thing, I sent like a big shipment to Moyles, and I had coyotes and cats and all kinds of stuff in there. That was the biggest thing in that whole order I got back.
They charged you for a coyote. They're like, no, sir, this does not qualify as a fox. Okay.
Yeah. And I think at one point I wanted to make something out of it, but it's kind of like back to what you're saying. It's, and every once in a while I'll pull that thing out, and I got the memory, and it's just cool, you know?
Well, and you know, even if you do want to rug your first bear, I mean, it's expensive. Don't get me wrong. I mean, no matter who you go through, it's going to be expensive, but like, but same thing. That's a good memento, right? That's a good, you're going to look at that every single time and remember your first achievement hunting a bear.
Yeah, my first bear is rugged. My dad. Well, you know, I feel when it comes to the hunting part of life, I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, kind of thing, because my dad's a taxidermist.
There you go.
Right. So as a kid, you kill something, and he just like a year later, however long it took him, it just show up hanging on the wall in your bedroom.
Right. Right.
And I'm not joking. Like, first bear, it's rugged. First deer, I didn't even know he was doing anything with it. I didn't even know. And like, one day I come home and it's hanging on the wall in my bedroom.
So,
and like,
did he shoulder mount it for you?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's in my house now, right? But like, you know, and he did the first beer for first deer.
I'm gonna mount my first beer.
Hey. Yeah.
This guy.
This guy over here.
You know, caribou
Hey.
not such a big deal, right? But like, you know, my first moose has got a nice what do you call that, with just antlers with the wrap around the skull.
Oh
Skull
yeah,
plate, yeah.
skull plate. Yep,
Wrap on
that's a
skull
good
plate.
look for moose.
And
I like that.
on a board, you know, on the wall there. And
Is that like with the leather?
Yeah.
Yeah, those
leather
look cool.
or I don't know if he did leather. What's the? It's a
Felt.
yeah, some felt maybe. Yeah, something like that. Almost
Like just
it almost looks like, it's not silk. It almost looks like silk though. It's real like almost
I like
shiny.
the rawhide ones.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
those look
stuff's
cool.
sick.
Like I saw one at a house I was working in that
Mhm.
like where the guy had like
It would be cool
like
if you took,
rope and rawhide. It
It'd
was
be really
sweet.
cool if you tanned your piece of your moose hide.
Ooh, that's a good idea. I'll bet you there's people that's
I bet you
exactly how they
somebody's
did
done
it.
that, Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got to do that next
You know,
time.
and I might have an unpopular opinion here, but for moose, like skull cap or Euro mount is peak for me. Like I like those. Like don't get me wrong, a good shoulder mounted moose, like
Mhm.
full skin, everything is cool. But like, dude, moose skulls,
They
like
do
they
look
just
cool.
look angry, bro. Like they're just like scowling.
Dude, we got
at
a
you,
caribou like in our bedroom like that. That's what one my wife and I got like when the first time we ever went hunting. And that thing looks awesome.
Mhm.
A buddy of mine did it, and it's just we got it hanging up and it's like a fairly decent,
Right.
rack.
Yeah,
But I love that look.
yeah, it's so cool, dude.
I mean, you can't get away with a lot of them in a house.
Mhm.
And I mean, we live in like a box, but like there's not a lot of place for dead stuff, but
yeah,
But-
so anyway, back to the bear discussion. So you drug yours out mostly whole,
all
Or whole.
completely whole.
okay, yeah,
Yep.
otter sled, drug it out of there.
Drug them out of there.
Is that how you typically do it, or do you?
It depends on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I almost always have an otter sled with me, no matter what kind of hunting I'm doing, because even if you're like wheeler
Mhm.
hunting and you want to just, and that's if you're in a busy bait where you have some aggressive behavior going on, right? Or just whatever. I like to just, even if I'm going to break that thing down in the field, I like to get it away from that bait station.
Yeah.
And you don't want
let
to
them have their
drag.
space.
Yeah, and you don't want to drag a bear. That's horrible on the hide. It's horrible to drag bears.
Mhm.
And it's just a quick means of getting them out of there.
Yeah.
I always have an otter sled. Like the boat, I always have an otter sled.
Yep.
If you shoot like you shoot a bear and you got like a little bit of a cut bank, get that boat nosed up under that cut bank and slide that bear right into the boat.
Mhm.
Or if you can't ride in, or you don't want to disrupt your bait station, because you can have a pretty good pause in activity, like killing a bear and then running a wheeler
No.
into it. You can. I've seen it. We've seen baits, and I have buddies
Mhm.
that ride. I have one buddy that parked his wheeler in the bait station and had to wrap it with like a barbed wire fence that they built. So the wheelers literally got parked underneath the tree stand.
I knew an old timer that would do that.
Like, and they would literally like, so the bears wouldn't chew the seats and chew the wheelers.
Yeah. I mean, I do work
I
hard to
have-
keep mine clean, but
I had a bait with a buddy of mine where we ran wheelers into it, and he killed a bear, and that bait went completely stale, and it was covered.
Really?
It was absolutely covered in bears.
Yeah.
I think it all depends on the location.
man, that's crazy.
I'm sure it does.
Usually it brings more bears in. They come in, they eat the guts, whatever. Like it's just
Well, that's a good thing to bring up too. So that's a big matter of controversy between bear baiters is, do you gut at the bear site or do you drag them
I
out
think it's
and
different.
take the guts
Different
elsewhere?
places.
Because a lot of people believe, like what you just said, if you gut them at the bait site, it goes dead for like a week, sometimes two. For whatever reason, right? Maybe the bears smell, the bears realize, oh, something came here to die, so I'm going to stay away. Or it brings in grizzlies, and now they're staying away because
I
grizzlies
was
are
referring
around.
more to like the traffic element, not so much the leaving like a carcass there or anything.
No, I know. I'm comparing that to the same situation.
Like just sort of the
yeah.
activity, not like Dalton, that
Mhm.
bait last year. I shot that dink,
Yeah.
tested out, threw the rib cage down, like just probably like 5 yards behind the bait. And then we went in there and he had that color phase on there like one or two times.
Right.
And he's like, man, that bear's not here. And I was like, I bet you that bear doesn't even care about this dog food. I bet it's eating that other bear.
right.
And they'll 100% do that.
And that's exactly what the case was. And that
Right.
bear had come down. I was like, I bet that bear's right here. We just spruce this up. There's going to be
Mhm.
something different going on here. It's going to be enough to catch his attention and draw him up here. And that's exactly what happened.
Right.
Yeah. But there's the argument among bear baiters.
Oh, yeah.
Is what I was
absolutely.
getting at. Comparing it to your wheeler
Yes,
point. Yeah.
yes.
So the whole thing with the wheeler thing, every time, if I've got a wheeler bait that I can pull my wheeler into, which this one is, when I bait it up, I pull my wheeler in.
Sure.
You know, I'll when I go to bait it up, I'll park the wheeler at the park spot, usually 100 yards or more from down the trail at least. Something to keep it away. Something, you know, keep it quiet. I always wondered with that little bear walking around behind me as much as it was. I sure hope that thing's not over there chewing up that new seat.
Your brand new seat.
Yeah. But what was weird is my rifle cover I left sitting on the wheeler was on the ground. So I don't know if he sniffed around it a little bit, but he didn't chew on anything. Anyhow.
It's freakier when you're in a boat.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Like, we got to get out of here.
Well, it's like when you and I were out moose hunting and we kept hearing that.
Oh,
like,
dude. Yeah. Cause like, and they get into fuel lines. They'll chew stuff like, dude, and there's enough guys that have dealt with it where they'll go back to leave after a long night and they're stranded because those things got into fuel lines or bears will walk. We've had with one bait where we came back one morning from dressing a bear out. And we're in there and we come back and there was paw prints all over the inside of the boat. And I'm like, dude.
Yeah. Well, even when you and I were out moose hunting, we had those wolf prints came right down the bank 20 yards from our camp and right up to the boat. Yeah. Like it was insane.
You don't want them chewing your transportation.
Yeah. I've heard of guys getting their seats eaten and like, I heard one story, a guy, he somehow spilled grease all over his wheeler on his way in, went hunted, didn't see bears the whole time when he went out. Wheeler was chewed to pieces. They found his wheeler and messed with it. But, you know, I'll park the wheeler. I walk in, even if I'm just in there, you know, 2:00 in the afternoon to bait it up. I'll walk in with a rifle, look at it, grab cards, look at the pictures, see what's happening. And if it needs baited up, I walk back to the wheeler, then I ride in, unload, do my thing, and I've never had and so I mean when I went back like this time, obviously I haven't been back since I killed it, but I just went back and got my wheeler, pulled it up to the bait, unloaded my stuff, walked over, cut up the bear, came back, loaded on the wheeler, and drove out just like any other time, right? You know, the wheeler sat there longer.
Seen it go both.
Yeah.
Where it'll just, I mean, the bait just goes dead cold.
I think it really, like you said, depends on location and the bears in that area, how spooky they are or what. And a big thing might be too, is if there's other food sources around and you come in there riding around and you're disturbing the area, they're like, screw this, I'm going to go over to this other place.
Just take them a while to warm back up to that.
I think it's something where like you could play around with it. Like if it's your first year at that location or something like that and you want to ride in to pick up a bear or something like that, do it and see how they react. And then if they react negatively, just don't do that.
And they'll warm back up to it too. I mean,
it's not going to kill it forever.
You know, I think I told you one year it was last spring. We threw baits. Had somebody come ride their wheeler right through my bait station. And there's no trail.
Yeah.
I told you about this. And like literally, I mean, knocking stuff down, trailblazing. There's no trail. And I use like a different way every year to walk into this bait. Like I've gotten where I can't even find it. There's been times where we can't even find it.
Yeah.
Right. But in fact, the last night when I went to go look for my bear, I got like flipped around. And I walked down one little draw and I had no idea where I was. I had to pull my phone out and I'm like, oh yeah, this stand's like 200 yards away. But so anyway, this guy comes in, I come back from Gamble and there's pictures of him in my bait station, like walking around and I'm like so bent. He's reading stuff. He's looking at stuff. I almost put him on Facebook. I'm like, you're going to get some, dude.
That happens every year.
Yeah. And there is the case for like hunter harassment there.
Yeah.
And
you're not allowed to mess with somebody's bait.
Yep. And
at all.
Well, so about as quick as I could let that soak in and ruminate on it for like a day, I go back in there and I am just piled in bears. Like the most piled I've ever been. And what I attributed it to was the exhaust.
Yeah. They love gas smell.
Bears, wolves. I mean, it's been proven bears love gas and wolves love gasoline. They love fuel exhaust.
It's one thing people have an issue with when they try to like stash gas for like their long boat trips or out of the cabin or something like that is keeping those cans from getting chewed on.
Yeah, I was piled in bears. I'm like, oh, well,
it makes sense.
Whatever.
And he probably made a long enough trail that it may have even led some new ones back to you.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean,
Now, I look at it kind of like, you and Dalton talk about peeing out of the stand. just doing that, or at least Dalton does.
Peeing out of stand?
Yeah, just peeing out of the stand, just doing it, and then the bears get used to it.
I kind of like. Well, yeah. I mean, I kind of think you should do whatever you're gonna do.
Yeah, and that's what he
stick to
right.
it.
And he's like, he goes, if I do it, bears just get used to it. It's not a problem. Yep. I look at like the wheeler thing the same way. If I pull that wheeler in there every time I bait up, they hear that wheeler leave, they think food. Right? I mean, the bears get accustomed to that. There's bears sleeping within 100 yards of your bait. Yeah. There's a good chance. They hear you walk in, they hear stuff bang around, and when you leave, they walk back in. There's more food. They're going to attribute the same thing to a wheeler.
And it depends on like what kind of bears you're dealing with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and there's even guys that they'll bring in or leave a chain at the bait, and they'll go rack that chain against the barrel, and same thing. Those bears get used to. Oh, right. That clinking sound means there's new food.
Oh yeah, my dad would just take a bucket and just like beat the bucket.
Yep, it's like
dinner bell.
Ringing the dinner bell. Yeah.
I actually have a buddy that he thinks he gets humor out of this. He has a bell.
An actual bell.
Yep, and he'll.
All right, I'm gonna get a triangle.
And he actually, yeah,
like the dinner
wagon.
triangle. Ding, 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 ding.
Put your apron on.
Right. That'd make for a good bear film, like a spoof film or something like that.
Yeah, put that on your Instagram, dude.
That's like some Rut Daniels.
That is funny, dude. No, and I don't know, like, and I'm always baiting for a grizzly bear.
Yeah.
I'm always baiting for a grizzly bear. My buddy that's super good bear hunter, he's actually got a pretty good state record. And I'm always asking him for advice, but he's like, you want to kill big black bears, hunt them like you're hunting grizzly bears.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I've seen that where I've tried to be super stealth. Those big bears, they don't get big hanging out of bait stations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They grow.
When
and
they
come in and they're leery and they like
mm-hmm.
look around, and you even have them where you can tell they're hungry, but they won't come eat. They'll come in and something's not right and they leave. Like that one I shot the other night.
Like the one
that left
the other night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like those bears.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how you're like, they'll come back. I have like a firm belief that there's good potential that bear won't come back because of all that disruption in there. Like all black bears are not the same,
That's true. Yeah.
Like I could see that bear where's he been before? I could see him just like he just walked out of my life forever.
I mean, we talked about bears
being like a bad Hallmark movie.
We talked a little bit about their range.
Bad girlfriend.
And I mean, I've had baits 5 miles apart with a sow and 3 little cubs, like first year, 3 little cubs. Baits 5 miles apart as a crow flies. River and mountains, well, not mountains, but river and decent hills in between. Within hours, be on one bait and then the next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you look at it and say, and that's where, people say, well, how close is too close? Right? Of another bait. And it's like, well, how close can they easily travel to get food if they don't like
I like these guys on Facebook. Well, like I bait 2 miles. Like, yeah, you killing bears? Well, no, but and it's like, well, yeah, okay.
Yeah. No,
cool.
It's a struggle. You can bait where other people are. It's closer to town. It's a lot more work.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it and kill bears. That's a fact.
Absolutely.
Well, and you can also,
and so much of it is where you put the work. Do you put the work into how far you drive and how much work you put in to get away from everybody?
Sure, yeah.
Or do you just work really hard and be there all the time and always have lots of food and it always tastes really good? Like always spend the money on the sweet, right?
Well, and it's something, I mean, you can like, if you wanted to get scientific with it, I mean, talking to people, you can like actually see like when people would be, let's say the first ones out in an area and they're slaying bears. And this is like I get meat every spring. I feed my family off this bait reliably. You've said it before with one of your baits, it's like, oh, all right, wife says we're short on meat. All right, I'll be back tomorrow. Like, all right,
I'm gonna go 11.
Yep, I'm gonna go get some meat. All right, I'll be right back, baby. But then somebody slips up, says the area on, a public forum or too many friends that tell their friends that tell their friends. Yep. And then next thing you know, the following spring, there's 10 baits all sprinkled within a few mile radius there.
Yeah.
And the area just dries up. And it's like, and you can like watch it happen.
There's
like
a lot of guys that don't believe in what you're saying right now. And
they need to pay attention.
You know what's funny? And like you and I, when I met you, the first time I ever met you, we were on a job site.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And you two, stop talking. I mean, and I'm like, here we go. But the beginning of something dangerous.
Right.
Yeah.
But dude, like and you and I have talked about this countless times. When people are talking, I'm listening.
Exactly.
And I'm not the kind of guy that I'm going to go run into dude, I've caught where people are baiting it. We all do it, and it's like, and I'll stay clear away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I never want to interfere with another guy's success at all.
Right.
Like that's just not. There's plenty of bears. There's plenty of real estate. Is it getting harder? Is it a lot of work? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't want to go ruin some other guy's time.
Well, that, and it doesn't help you any either, because now that you know there's multiple baits out there, and that's not somewhere you want to be for your own success either. And
I've like sat and listened to guys. They'll start going, well, yeah, we were out calling and we got up and there was a coyote standing there, and they're like, oh yeah, do you guys park by that fence again? And I'm sitting in the other room with my tools on my toolbox and got a notepad in my hand. Because like, that's a little different. No one's eating coyotes, right? Like you keep blabbing, I'll keep writing.
I mean,
you're not taking food out of people's mouths.
If I know somebody who's a good hunter, has got a successful bait, and they've worked hard to put it in, I could say I'll leave them alone. If I run into a spot, I know there's a lot of baits, and I want to hunt in that spot for some particular reason, and I've done it. And like I say, it's a lot of work, and there's reasons to do it. At that point, it's fair game. Everybody knows everybody's in here. I'm going to work as hard as I can. I'm going to get away from everybody.
If you know your competition baiting.
Right. That's the thing. But if there's one other guy in there, then I clear out.
Yeah.
If I'm in a valley like, oh, this is awesome, this is beautiful, I start following trails.
Yeah.
Because I want to find if there's another bait in there, because then I'm not going to bait there.
Yep.
And if there's not, I can't find that other bait,
right,
then it's fair game.
Well, there's something to that too. And like, there's a bait that I got right now. I had company. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think happened is none of us were getting bears. And I even cashed out on it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this year, guess what? No one's hunting there.
Yeah.
Because it sucks.
Right.
And I'm the only guy there that stuck it out, that's willing to go, that's too dumb to quit.
Mm-hmm.
And there's bears in there. And that's like, it's, if you think outside the box, there's a lot of ways to approach this. Like, you could be very methodical about this.
And perfect example with where Mo got his bait this year, or where he got his bear just this weekend. It's like, just because, it sucks this year doesn't mean it's going to suck the next year or the year after that. 2 years, no baits or no bears. And then you got, what was it, like 20 something bears rolling through that one bait? Like
more than that. Yeah. At one point, more than that in a season. Yeah.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about this. You'll see this with like popular areas. Guys will, and this is kind of hard to pinpoint if you're starting out and you're trying to set a game plan up. We've all seen it. Mo and I were talking about this. Guys will bait spots and they'll cash out.
Yeah.
It's like they did all the work for you. And they don't even care if you go there. They're like, yeah, take it. It sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you go in there and there's bears all over the place in there. And those guys they just lost hope.
Well, and that's a great point for especially new guys, going into it. If you haven't seen a bear and it's June 10th yet, don't give up. Like, because they could show up June 20th and absolutely clobber the last 10 days. That's the hottest time of the season.
Dude, I've seen where guys, kind of historically, everyone kills their bears last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like, I know people that just camp in their spot.
Yep.
Right. And that's their 4-day weekend. There's a lot of people that they'll kill a couple bears. They'll clean up. They'll call it. Those bears are hungry. They're used to that, that all that food source, right? You're still out there. Maybe that's a good bait. Maybe that's the more promising bait if you're a bear. That's gonna fill your nutritional needs, whatever these guys are doing, right? They pull out and there's no food anymore. And you're still pushing it because you haven't got anything yet. And those bears just migrate over to your, like, I've seen this tons of times.
Often bears show up in June.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just like a switch flips and boom, they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's even that one that Dalton and I ran that one year. Went up Memorial Day weekend, nothing hit. And we'd set that one early May. Memorial Day weekend, nothing hit. Went up halfway, went out there halfway through the week later, nothing hit. Went out there the next weekend, 200 pounds of food gone.
Yep.
Like it just like a light switch flipped. It was insane.
Mm-hmm.
So don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. There's plenty of time left.
That whole self-talk thing I was saying, like when you're sitting there, like that, pushing it. Like I almost got up and left the other night, last night. It's being there the first time they hit too.
Yeah.
Like those bears hadn't been around. And I've had that happen more often now, killing bears, where those bears aren't even on camera. There's no sign that they've been around. And that's the first time they're passing through. And they're moving a lot right now too.
Yeah.
They're chasing sows.
Well, and we like we talked about earlier, it's so much of it is a mental game. You're out there, you're either by yourself or you're with a buddy that you're not talking to, maybe a whisper here and there, but you're not like having a full blown conversation, giggling and stuff, right? Like, but I mean, it's happened, but it's not supposed to happen. But that's a lot of time to get into your own head.
I had a buddy at a bait one time, and his first time ever at a bear bait. And I know I was probably 17, 18 at the time. And he was a year or two younger, and he was just there to hang out and have fun. Two buddies, actually. Dalton was one of them. We had another friend with us and in a platform stand. And I'd killed bears before, but I think this may have been my first one with a bow. The bear comes in. It's not a small, 5 foot or so, just over 5 foot. Chocolate, cinnamon, like had a real dark face. Towards the end of June. Anyway, bear comes in, is eating, playing around, climbs up the tree next to us, right over by my buddy. I'm like, leave it alone. Don't reach your hand over there. Come on, dude. And the bear goes back to the bait, and then it just like sits up on its butt and starts scratching its butt on a root. Imagine a cartoon bear scratching its butt on a root, and that's what this was like. Okay, just the whole in rhythm. Like he did it, and he laid down, and he did it again, and my buddy's just losing it over here, just like, dude, quiet.
I've got I'll tell you off the air.
Yeah. Talk about giggling in a tree stand. That's what I think of every time.
They do some goofy stuff, man. But yeah, it's a lot of time to get into your own head, and you can talk yourself out of something real easy when you're out there. But when it's drizzling a little bit and you're wet and it's cold and maybe your thermocell runs out of fuel or something like that because you didn't plan properly. I've had all of it. And you're just sitting there in the suck and just sometimes 5 minutes after you walk out, that's when they're going to come in. It's just you got to convince yourself to just hang out. And you know what? If it's making you hate, don't do it.
That's true.
Yeah, it's that miserable. If it's affecting you emotionally.
Exactly. If it's literally making your life hell, don't worry about it, right?
I was kind of there last night.
But don't just wimp out early, sometimes it takes a 6 hour, 8 hour, 10 hour sit to get those bears to come in.
I think, something else, those big bears like that, maybe they are around. Maybe they have been at your bait. They're just not going into your bait because they're not looking for food. They're looking for sows. Right. Or it just kind of starts getting your train of thought moving in a different direction, thinking outside the box. I watch some of these bears sometimes, these bait stations, they don't even come to the bait.
Yeah.
They walk around the bait. They're picking up smells. They're not going in and eating or anything. And it's like, well, how often are you going in, not seeing pictures? Right. And you're like, oh, there's no bears here, but there are, right? Or they're passing through, and you could squeeze a shot off on a bear that's just passing through for a second. I mean,
plenty of people do.
I've seen boars where they're on the move. They'll come into a bait station. They'll cut right through it. They won't even stop. I mean, they're just, you can kind of see them milling around as they're moving. They don't even stop to do anything. And they're looking for sows. Yeah. And they're big.
Well, and I mean, we're hunting them during the bear rut. So that's what they're, just like everything else. When they get their mind on breeding, that's all they care about. So,
yep.
Yeah. I don't know if they're quite as bad as caribou where they stop eating altogether, but I'm sure they're focused.
No, they keep eating. They get more focused on that.
Yeah.
It's and that's what's great about a bait. I mean, what do guys like? Food and
women.
Yeah, right. So when you get that hot sow on your bait, they're after her, but then they find the food.
Yeah.
It's just
I've skipped dinner to chase my wife around the house a few times.
Amen, brother. Amen. With that, let's take a break real quick. Hammer Bullets produces what we at the Northern Hunter consider to be the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are easy to load, extremely accurate, and best of all, they're always in stock and ready to ship. The guys at Hammer designed them so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, it sheds its petals, initiating a massive energy dump while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration. These bullets are built with 100% focus on how they perform on game, and their proprietary designs produce great BCs with specialized pressure grooves for amazing inherent accuracy and speed. They have a minimum expansion velocity of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots, but with no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity round like the Weatherby 30-378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com and use discount code TheNorthernHunter to drop the hammer on your next adventure. The last thing I had for you guys is I wanted to bring up the fact that Mo, that picture you posted of all the different cuts that you got off that bear, that was a phenomenal job. I mean, I know a lot of guys that'll do, just grind up their whole bear. I like taking, like the ribs or the roast or something like that. But the way you had that broke down, at least especially in that picture, I mean, you had a little bit of everything. So kind of go into that process. Like once you got it home, we talked about killing them, how to get them home, how to keep the bears coming in after the kill, all that good stuff. Go into like that processing the next day, like when you woke up and went over there.
I think it's important, and just a really quick comment on even the skinning process, especially by yourself in the field or whether you take the whole thing home, it's not for the faint of heart. My dad knows multiple people who went bear hunting, bear baited. They did all the work to bear bait, to get a bear. And when it came to skinning it, that was the last bear they ever shot.
Yeah.
It's just...
A lot of people say they're very human-like when you skin them out, which I've always noticed them to be more like, I don't know, like naked mole rat looking. Like, I mean, they just, especially when you get the head off of them, like they just look freaky without their skin on.
If you take that thing and you spread it out without any skin on, especially like with the hands, especially without the head on there.
Yeah.
It looks
very human-like.
It can look very much like, you look at it a little bit, you realize what, especially if you know what you're looking at, but first glance, it looks like a naked skinned human body. I mean,
that's my buddy. He's a Native American. He's Hopi, which are from Arizona, and his people actually, like traditionally, they wouldn't hunt bear for that reason. They said it was too human-like when they skinned them out. So it was like a thing have you heard way back then. Like
somebody finding some human hands cut off in the woods, and
it
turns out it was
bear.
Yeah.
Me and Austin were talking about that earlier, about like people when we were breaking mine down doing the paws and everything. We were talking about, like, I don't know if you guys remember a few years ago, but like somebody had reported that there was a body at the transfer site.
Oh yeah,
and like troopers went over there and stuff, and it was just a black bear.
Oh really?
Yeah.
No, I don't know what I'm more upset about, that there was a black bear carcass at the transfer site.
I think it happens like often enough.
It does.
People freak out about it.
But anyhow, breaking it down, get home, you've got it quartered. It's a little different than a cervid, like a deer or a moose. I'd say the biggest difference is the lines aren't as clear.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So the front quarters are pretty easy, pretty straightforward. The hind quarters, it's more. But when you've got all that fat on there, you just cut in the spot that looks right, and you're pretty close, right?
Right. Yep.
And then work your way along the bone, and it's actually a lot less risky to cut the hind quarters on a bear without gutting than a moose or a deer. You don't have that tendency, as much of a tendency to stick the knife in the wrong spot. There's less room for that. But I mean, that's pretty easy. I think just anybody who's cut up anything can figure that out. I mean, I took like I said, I took out the whole rib cage with the everything on it.
Yeah.
So I could cut all the brisket pieces of meat and neck meat and back strap off and get the tenderloins out from the inside.
How thick was that brisket layer on the outside of those ribs? I mean, with that fat and everything, I mean,
there wasn't a lot of fat on the front. I mean, there was a little bit, but it was inch and a half. I mean, it was
good. Yeah, that's a good brisket right there.
And with that, for this bear anyway, I just chopped it up. Like, it was good thick meat, so I chopped it up into like chunks to put in bags, and we can fry that up, make steaks with it, whatever. Yeah, steak bits.
It makes really good like fajita meat too, like just the real thin sliced ones. Oh man, that stuff's so good.
Yeah. So I mean, it did look like a real good picture of all kinds of different cuts. Really, you had backstrap, you had roast meat, off of the hindquarters. Anything, there's some spots in the hindquarters where you get a pretty good clean piece of meat where it's mostly fat layers and not silver skin, or only a little bit. And so I've got one of those off each two of those off each hindquarter. Obviously, there's one really good cut and one that's pretty good. And I like having roasts.
Mm-hmm.
You can always pull that roast out and chop it up and make it into something else, right? Once you chop something else, you chop something up, you can't turn it into a roast later.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of a roast is like, I think it's Ranella freezer, the delayed waste machine. Because, especially chest freezers, I mean, my goodness, you'll have something at the bottom of that that's 2 or 3 years old. But you can take a 2 or 3 year old roast out, throw it through the grinder on the counter, and it's good as new.
Right,
Like I've done it. Like it's a great.
You got me thinking. My wife and we found like some caribou meat from I think it was like 2020 or something, like recently. And she was like, "You think this is good?" And I was like, "There's only one way to find out." And it was awesome.
Yeah,
2020 is not too bad.
Like I mean,
no, that's not bad at all.
And and I've talked to people. They're like that. Like, oh no, that you don't want to eat that. Like,
and if you preserve it right, it's fine though.
At this point, with the amount of food that we eat for game meat, and I don't have a lot in the freezer, right? We just Ziploc everything.
Yeah,
we eat it so fast. We just Ziploc.
Did you do
not worth the effort.
Saran wrap
Nope.
and then?
Nope.
Oh no, not even that.
Nope, just Ziplocs.
Ain't gonna last long enough.
No, it's not. Well, that little deer I shot last year, the front quarters just went into a gallon Ziploc bag.
Nice,
all folded up. I tell you, that's the best deer meat I've ever eaten. Put that in the crock pot. That whole front quarter.
Yeah, dude.
Like just fell off the bone. All that because if you put that in crock pot, all that silver skin and cartilage just falls apart and melts in the meat.
Mm-hmm.
You just eat it off the bone. Oh, that was so good.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
You almost needed 2 to feed the family, but it's a young deer. It wasn't, it wasn't a baby, but
right.
Didn't have any spots on it. But anyhow, so with the bear, I mean, the same thing goes with the quarter as when you're cutting the quarters off. It doesn't look the same, right? Trying, on a front quarter, I just try to find the line on the shoulder blade when I start, cut along one side of that, and then work my way around the shoulder blade, cutting all the meat off. I'm sure there's a chef somewhere that has pictures online of where to cut to get all just the right cuts. I try to do that a little bit with a deer. With a bear, not as much. It's pretty straightforward what I want. Everything that I don't, I'll set it aside if I want to make a roast out of it. And then otherwise, I just chop it up and try to cut as much silver skin off as I can as I throw it towards the grinder, right?
Right.
And I have a grinder, just a big bin all the grinder meat goes into. With the bear, I try to leave as much fat on it as I can. And I mean, I had so much fat. Without pulling the fat, without pulling fat that I had separated, there was a tremendous, I had pieces of meat going in there with just like a 1/2-inch slab of fat on them.
So
going through the grinder, making it for burger.
What that's really nice on is when you can cut those roasts that have that nice layer of fat on the outside.
Oh yeah, I had that too. Some of those roasts had layers of fat in them and on them, and
so good.
Oh yeah, and so yeah, that's just what I do. I don't have any like chuck roasts and pot roasts and all the different types of like cuts, and like you open somebody's freezer and everything's labeled and packaged, and it's like
right.
Personally, and growing up in a family that ate a lot of just game meat. Like, and my dad's not crazy about all that stuff too. He just says the same thing. Okay, big roast, small roast, like,
right, yeah.
And you can tell by the size of the package. And okay, backstrap, tenderloins, nuts, right? Like,
yeah.
I wrote that on the bag. I put them in the bag, put them in the freezer. Like, I'm going to collect these this year, see how many bears I can kill and just do one plate, right? But
bear oysters.
Oh yeah. And
hey, a good breading and a little bit of seasoning, not as bad as you think.
Well, they're good, dude.
Yeah.
Believe
it or not.
Unlike a deer, when they're real small, you just take the layers off the outside of them and put them on the frying pan, a little bit of oil. They pop almost like a piece of popcorn.
Yep. You can even split them open.
Yeah.
Like kind of halfway fold them down.
And they'll just one side will just
like butterfly them.
Yeah. And you just dude, it's the juiciest.
It's butterfly nuts.
Butterflied nuts. It's pretty good.
Bigger, like with
how elegant.
I was cutting up the bear and their nuts are just sitting there on the table, and my sister walks in. Are those the bear's nuts? Like, yep, that's what those are. Are you gonna eat those? Yep. Oh, that's gross.
That's just part of an animal.
Yep. They're very edible. They're good.
Well, and the thing I like, so obviously there's a lot of people that just would grind an entire bear up because they don't know what else to do with it, or they're worried about the trichinosis effect, and so they don't want to take those bigger cuts of meat and everything. But you know what I found? If you plan anything, you plan to slow cook, whether it's low and slow in the smoker or low and slow in a slow cooker, pressure cooker, if you got one of those Instant Pots, those things are awesome for any kind of game meat, but especially for bear. as long as you get that internal temperature good. Like the one thing I'll never make is bear steaks because I don't like a well done steak.
But dude, even a well done bear steak is still juicy. That's the thing.
It's still juicy, but it's just not.
Especially if you make them in bear grease. Put it this way: if you
I might cook them a little bit different, but
get them in a hot frying pan with some bear grease first and singe the outsides.
Yeah.
So where that holds that juices in there, singe and then throw that thing in the
finish it in the ovens.
In the oven or on the grill.
Like sear in it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just do a
sear
pan
it.
sear.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yep.
See, I'm a real chef over here. Singe, sear, whatever. Same thing.
I'm learning.
I don't know. I you know, and to that point, whenever I did bear steaks back in the day, I always grilled them. And that might have been part of my issue is grilling them.
So even if you're going to do that, sear them first.
Right. And that's what I didn't do.
So sear them in the bear
that might
grease.
be a game
That
changer
really
there,
makes a big difference.
But like roasts, I really like the ribs. I'll keep the ribs on the bone. And just we'll throw those into slow cook them. Briskets. Oh, dude, the briskets are awesome. You can make those into anything. But like, I think a lot of people have that misconception that you just throw the bear in the grinder, and it's kind of sad to see that because there's a lot of really good cuts of meat.
I also know
do
people
all kinds
that
of cool stuff with
already have enough bear in the freezer that they're just like, I'm just going to grind the whole thing.
Oh, sure.
Because it'll last forever. We can make whatever we want out of it, and it is what it is, right? Or they'll even say, I'm going to sausage the whole thing. Take it down to the local processor and say, turn it into this kind of sausage, and then you're sitting there in the bear stand eating bear sausage, waiting for the bears, right?
Pepperoni sticks, Italian sausage, breakfast sausage.
I always get some pepper sticks made.
Mm-hmm.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
You know what's good too? It's like you could do like a Corning brine.
Heard of that? I've never tried it yet.
So you follow the instructions. You get like a good Corning brine if that's your bag. So like you brine it, follow the instructions, and then throw it in the crock pot.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that. Sometimes I'll actually take it and sear it before I throw it in the crock pot too to get that good like golden brown outside. And it doesn't get like goopy.
Yeah, yeah.
You're just gonna have that little bit of like seared edge to it,
mm-hmm.
and then you put it in the crock pot. Kind of like I guess you would sear any like cut of meat that you're gonna throw in the crock pot.
Yeah,
you kind of always is a good idea to do. And then you can slice that up and make like sandwiches out of that. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah,
do like sourdough and coleslaw and Thousand Island dressing if that's your bag. A couple jalapenos on there, dude.
Yeah, dude,
it's so good. And then you can use that meat for anything. Another thing I've done too is you take and what's that?
I was gonna say corned bear hash.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and you can take that too and throw like one of those roasts in and throw like squeeze a lime in there. Throw a thing of Lawry's taco seasoning in there and make. Dude, you could make all kinds of good stuff.
The one thing I'll say, especially with bear meat, is it marinates so good. Like when you put a nice acidic marinade in there,
it takes marinade really
and
well.
Then you slow cook it, and it just pulls so nicely. It's such a good pulled, like barbecue or anything you want to do with it. Like it's like you said, sandwiches. Like that's one of my favorite things to do. Like such a good thing, such a good cut of meat. And there's all these options. Like I think. People get weirded out about trichinosis, but it won't kill you even if you do catch it. Like it.
Well, and there's no reason that you should.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
if you eat pork, you're already at risk for it. I'll put it that way. Like if you've grown up eating pork, pigs have trichinosis too. Like so, you gotta like they might like maybe a farmed pig might be a little bit less of a worry,
pigs
but like
today don't. Like they've gotten rid of most of that. To the point
still
where
a risk.
It is still a risk, but to the point where the FDA is not even that like big of a deal with
about
pigs anymore because they worked so hard to get rid of it. Bears, absolutely.
Yeah,
99%
I think it's like 3 and 5
have
carry it. Is what I was reading.
I think it's I mean, there's a lot of bears that have it.
Well, and to that extent, I mean, it's very low numbers, very low odds, but there's even been moose meat that's been tested.
Right, and usually that happens when they get bit by a bear that has it, or they. Everybody, will say, well, it's a herbivore. That's all they eat is grass, but have you seen the pictures of the deer eating a bird?
Yeah.
Right? Like
even horses. There was that picture of that horse that was just gobbling up little chicks, like little chickens.
Yeah.
Like, like you're a horse, bro. Like that's not what you're supposed to do.
But they will eat whatever reason, whatever gets in their head. Like, so if a moose just, who knows what that moose ate? But somebody's, guts off a bear pile smelled good and he took a sniff and some licks, and that's all it takes.
That's all it takes. So I mean, the chances are low, but never zero.
Right.
So like,
although most people will cook moose rare.
Oh, I do.
And never
all the
have an
time.
issue, right?
All the time.
You know, the man who has gotten, the most popular man that I know of who has gotten trichinosis was Steve Ranella.
Mm-hmm.
And he got it because he was cooking bear steaks over a fire and cooked them rare.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, you know, that's what happens when you do dumb stuff. Right? Anyhow. And,
Jeez.
he, he looked really good too. Like he cooked these bear steaks and I think maybe they got a moose on the trip and they broke open a bone and put the marrow on and all this kind of stuff.
I'm sure it was delicious.
Oh yeah. And it was, but I ended up in the hospital and all that. But even he's done a bunch of research on it since then, right? Even like since getting a bear and sending the meat in to get it tested and all that, just out of curiosity, how much there is in it. And apparently so FDA 160 degrees is what they recommend to cook to, which is a lot. That's hot.
That's well done.
That's well done. But he says 140 degrees. And that's from, you know, all the people he's talked to, like 140 degrees kills it every time.
Which I would believe all day long.
Once from the guy who's got it,
yeah.
If he's willing to risk 140, I'm willing to risk 140.
Well, and if he's got it and he's willing to risk it again,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
It's not something that should put you off from cooking bear meat. Like
right.
Yeah.
And if you're not comfortable with 140, then do 150 or 160, whatever. If you have to cook it to 180, you know what? Bear meat's still good.
Oh yeah.
Like even
That's like I was saying earlier. You know, it's like God made bear meat. He's like, I'm going to put something in here that'll make you really sick, and you're going to have to cook it really, really well done, right? But I'll make it taste good if you have to do that.
You're right. Exactly. Exactly. But that's why I love like the slow cook method for these things, because the smoker or the slow cooker, any of those, I mean, yeah, you're getting that internal temperature up to 140 or 160 or whatever you're getting it up to, right? But it's like, it's still tender, it's still juicy, it still locks all that stuff in. Like, it's not like and honestly, even like if you just pan sear something, like it's not as tough. I had that bad experience with the steaks, which is why I haven't done steaks since. But now that you mentioned the searing and maybe even pan searing and some butter just all the way through, like that might not even be too bad.
Bear fat.
Ooh,
come on,
bear
now.
fat. That's a good thing to do, yeah. But like, because especially now I have one of those like those meat thermometers too.
You have the meter one that says, you know, it's got like box and everything.
It's not the wooden box, but my mom got it for me like 10 Christmases.
Okay.
Not that many Christmases ago, like 5 Christmases ago. But it's got 4 different leads on it, and you stick it in, and it all goes to this thing, and you can like set different ones to different temperatures, and it beeps when it reaches. It's way fancier than I need it to be.
There's a super fancy one for like, I don't know, Meat Eater sells it. They don't make it, but I've seen it in Sportsman's and stuff. And it's like Bluetooth and like, it's just one. Oh, you can get up to a 4 Pro, but they're all wireless. So you just put them in there and stick them together.
Mine are all wired. They've got just the aux.
I've seen those, and you can get those pretty cheap off of Amazon. But I thought I was talking about, I was at home last night and I was frying myself up some backstrap, and because I got home late and everything, right? So I'm frying up some backstrap and some bear fat, and I was like, man, I should get a meat thermometer. And my wife goes, oh, I got one right here. And it was just, it's a traditional meat thermometer that has the dial on it. So I stick it in a piece of the meat in the frying pan there, and it just starts climbing and climbing. And it goes to 140. I thought, oh, good. And then I get to 150, 160, 170, 180. Okay, I'm good. I'm going to shut this thing off. Well, because I didn't know. I'm like, I don't want to undercook this stuff. Like, I don't want to pull a Steve Ranella, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and again, to that point, when I was making these steaks on the grill, I have no idea what their internal temperature was. I wasn't that fancy back then. I was just some North Pole redneck. So like, it was like...
Right, well, and to be honest too, though, they were still really good because they were so greasy.
Yeah.
Right? You get that...
They were good, but mine were real...
All right, well, I just mean what I was eating last night.
Oh,
like,
what
it
you
was
were
still
eating,
really juicy. Granted, it was less than 24 hours old. And,
fresh, never frozen.
A lot of game meat is not really steak meat when you think about it.
I've never had a problem with moose, but just about everything else, I kind of like. I love me a moose steak, like
I'll eat
big one. But like caribou, I don't really make steaks out of anymore. Bears, I kind of quit making steaks out of. But that's kind of like more. I use the moose like and then everything else I can just make my pepperonis and summer sausages and roasts and fajita meats and things like that. Stew meat is a big one.
I think we're used to like the flexibility in beef as a culture.
Yeah.
And I'll eat a steak off any game animal. I have no limit. But I just keep in mind that it's not going to be like a piece of prime cut beef, right?
Right.
But
well, that's where I love when you get those pieces that have that nice thick layer of fat on the outside of them. Like especially if you can get a moose with a nice thick layer, and I mean I'll cut those intentionally into steaks just to have that. So because then that's where a lot of your flavor is,
right?
And so it's good stuff. But
you know what else is good is take you could take like any chunk of like a quarter and just treat it like a brisket, like rub it and put it in a smoker and hammer it with your smoke. And then just let it run its time out, like get that initial smoke and then just let it run its time, and it comes out really good too.
That's
my neighbor's gonna do a couple for us, I think, here like awesome. Next day or so.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. That's my buddy.
I'll let you try some.
That did the lunch at the event. I told him, if I get one, he's getting a leg to do up that way. I was like, I want to see. I want to see what you can do with this. Like,
I bet he can do some stuff with that.
Yeah,
the folks down there at North Coast Electric, did their trade show a week ago, a few days ago. I don't remember, last week sometime. And they, every time for the last couple of weeks before the trade show thing, I'm in there buying stuff, and they're, here's another ticket, write name and number on it, whatever, for this Traeger.
Ooh,
pellet.
Yeah. Did you get one?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's what this is about. This is Mo's gripe session here. They never called me. Like,
what buns his bacon?
Right. They never called me.
Come on, guys, pull it together.
Anyway, I was just like, of course, it might have been the fact that they were like the day before the trade show. They're like, "You're going to come in tomorrow?" I was like, "Yeah, if I remember, I'm going to come in." And I made some off the wall comment, like, "I'll probably remember at like 2:00. It was over at 1." The next day, I'm leaving to go get parts at 2:00, and I go, "Oh man!" I went over there, and they still had so much food. They're like, "Oh, come into the back. Come in the back. We're gonna open all this up. You better take a bunch."
There you go.
It was barbecue, barbecue pulled pork.
Ooh, I love me some pulled pork, man.
Baked beans with pulled pork in them.
Ooh, buddy, I bet you that'd be good with bear too. Do some barbecue pulled bear with beans.
Yeah.
I mean, I know barbecue pulled bear is good anyways, but you mix the beans in there and everything.
Something I was going to mention that's kind of like, it's a little goes against the grain of all this celebratory conversation with what we do with eating black bear and stuff, is wear gloves when you dress your black bears out.
Yeah,
that's a smart idea. Yeah,
that's honestly smart with anything, but especially bears.
Like a lot of us have hands-on jobs where we have and stuff like that, and I have buddies personally that I know that have had months down from getting sick and getting infections from skinning bears without gloves.
Right.
And, like ungulates and stuff, not such a big deal. It can be from what I gather, but like you're like predators, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of potential for you to pick up passengers.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Well, and the thing is, those latex gloves, those mechanic working, replaceable, use them once, throw them away, latex gloves. I've got the orange ones at my house. They're cheap.
Yep.
You buy a box of 100 for $20, and then you've got 50 pairs of gloves right there that you can use all through the year, and that is a huge thing, and I've done moose before with no gloves just because I forgot to throw them in the pack before I jumped on the plane or whatever. Right. And like, had cuts on my hand, and I didn't get an infection, but I do remember it distinctly, like stinging, like it was a weird stinging feeling as I'm undoing this moose. But with bears especially, anything that's kind of a more, I don't want to call it a dirty meat, but like a
more prone to
no,
I mean that's a good way to get trichinosis,
parasites and
right?
stuff. Yeah,
cut yourself open and get some of that bear blood in there if he's got it. That's a good way to get it.
And even all the way back to back in Kansas, I mean, doing raccoons as a it's like same thing. They're trash, eating trash and whatever they can find. And I mean, same concept as a bear, like and you always wanted to wear gloves, skinning those things out too.
Well, and there's a lot of like old schoolers. I know a bunch of old school dudes that they're like they just laugh at the glove thing, and I skinned predators for a long time without gloves because I didn't know any better. And I'd be actually hammered myself. I remember one time I nailed myself. I think I told you about this. I was skinning a coyote, knocking suds back and nailed myself with that knife. And my buddy was like, dude, he's like, you're going to get an infection. I was like, what? I scrubbed the crap out of that thing with rubbing alcohol, like right when I did it. And and I lucked out. But I know a guy that I think he said he had like a 9-month treatment from getting an infection from a black bear.
Wow. Yeah. So yesterday or 2 days ago, when I was cleaning that bear, I got knives out and everything. I was like, you know what I didn't have with me?
Gloves.
Yeah. So I'm here. Like,
well, and there's
I cut it up and it did everything that we already talked about. But right at the end, I'd quartered it and I was just getting the guts out of the of the torso, and I reach in there, I'm pulling out the last bit of lungs, and like I said, the lungs were gone. Lungs were obliterated. Heart was split in half. Pulling all that out, pulling all the extra blood and stuff out, and the hole that the bullet had exited was all jagged from the. I think it was the entrance.
The ribs.
For the ribs, yeah. It broke a rib. My finger slipped into the hole, and like I yanked against it by accident, and like cut just a little cut, and I could feel it right away. Like, that's not good.
Yeah.
Like, I hadn't cut myself with a knife or anything, and my hands actually like didn't have cuts on them for once. And so I got back to the truck, pulled out first aid kit, put some betadine on it because that's what I had, and then got home, put peroxide in it, and it's all good now. So far,
we hope.
Yeah, unless there's something growing in my bloodstream that's going to make me real sick in the next few days.
Right.
But
yeah. we might be recording the next episode from the hospital.
No, yeah, it's like
we just got to move the studio, guys.
It's just something to consider, and it is. And it's like anything. It might never happen, but boy, if it does, and like missing work and being down and just not being 100% from something stupid like that. Yep. I mean,
it's an easy thing to avoid.
Yep.
And those gloves they weigh nothing. Literally nothing.
You and I know a taxidermist, someone that we both know, that he got incredibly ill from an exposure like that.
Yep.
And wears gloves, everything he does.
Yep.
And he even goes as far as like, wash your clothes, don't take them in the house. These things are gross. All these things are gross, Chris. That's what he's always telling me. Like, things are really gross. I'm like, man, okay. Like, but he's got a good point, you know?
Yeah.
You miss work or you miss hunting time or whatever. I mean, it just sucks.
It does.
So, some little thing like that. But
yeah, all good stuff to keep in mind. And then with you guys getting the fat that you did off those bears, I mean, I know you got almost 2 gallons full or gallon bags full. Chris, you said you filled up a 5-gallon bucket off yours. You guys plan on rendering all that down?
Oh yeah. Well, my dad was like, all I want is some backstrap and some fat. So he took the lesser bag of fat. I sent you that picture. Yep. I think it was posted too. He took the lesser bag of fat and I gave him a chunk of backstrap. And I mean, that's pretty cheap for turning my toes and everything right on the bear, like
right.
and for my throat got something in my throat, and for turning and for letting me use all his equipment and everything. So I'm not gonna argue. Here you go, have at it. But yeah, I mean, a gallon of fat still.
Oh, that'll make plenty
still
of
a
grease.
nice amount. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna render that down.
That goes good in cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of using like butter, and it's noticeable.
Yeah.
I mean, like you use bear fat and like baking and stuff. It is really good.
Well, you look at any of those old like Pioneer recipes and stuff. Like Madeline, my wife has an old book, and it's like pie crust even, and it's all bear fat pie crust. Right. And I was like, oh, that'd be awesome.
It is.
But, yeah. I bet that's a whole different world there.
And like cooking other stuff in it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you like, dude, take a piece of sockeye and cook a piece of sockeye in bear fat.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
well, and the cool thing is, I mean, once you render that stuff down, it's shelf stable.
Right.
Like you can leave it.
You just put it on the shelf,
in a mason jar right next to the stove. Just unscrew it when you need a little bit, throw a dollop in the cast iron, and screw the lid back on. It's good to go. Like, it'll stay good for 6 months, a year. You throw it in the fridge, it's good for multiple years. Like, I mean, we had moose tallow that was 2 years old, and it was still perfectly good, not rancid, not nothing. Like, it was not like sometimes it can get like a real thick, like extra thick.
Yeah. Or you got to warm it up a little bit. Get it workable.
Like, it was perfectly good as long as you render it down properly and you don't just leave all the other stuff cooking in there for too long.
Render it down, strain it out. Yeah.
Yep. It's super good stuff.
Run it through like cheesecloth or
which, and that's awesome that you guys got that, because spring bear are normally pretty lean.
Yeah. I mean, it's something I've wanted to do, but like I got a bear from a guy. A guy brought me some quarters like 2 years ago. What was it last year? No, I think it was 2 years ago. He's like, hey, took my nephew out to get a bear. He got one. I don't have time to do anything with it. His family's not interested in the meat. You want it? I said, absolutely. So he dropped it off, and I went and took care of it. But either when they skinned it, they cut all the fat off, or it just didn't have that much. There was I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get bear fat, and I was listening to Bear Grease at the time and all that, right?
Yeah.
And, there was no fat on that, which and I think it kind of gotten skinned off with
trimmed
the hide,
off, yeah.
But
Which a lot of people do.
It's easy to do if you don't, especially if you haven't done it before. And then it does create a lot of work later for fleshing and stuff. And it's one thing, like growing up with my dad skinning bears out in the field, like just clean skinning them as best you can. As long as you're not going to like mount it or something or rug it, even then, as long as you do it right, you hardly have anything to do later.
Yeah.
So, but anyhow.
Yeah.
If you want to keep that fat, work in a clean environment too. You're going to render it down anyway and strain it several times. But you start getting a bunch of I did mine in the grass, and I had grass and everything, but I don't care because I trim it all up later. And
two things I wish I had with me. One was the gloves. Second was a tarp.
Yeah.
Especially being on a wheeler. I don't have, I got to worry about weight. If I had a tarp to just throw under the bear or under the sides of him as I was quartering that side.
Yeah.
That way it's not getting
it can make
leaves all over everything. It's just leaves. It's all organic. It ain't going to hurt you, but it's just nice for it not to be there.
Well, and clean meat can affect the taste, especially
sure.
like if you're getting hair and twigs and dirt and everything on there. And that's one thing to keep in mind. We've talked a lot about cutting bears up ourselves, but a lot of people just take them to a processor, which is fine. We're not shaming anybody for that. A lot of people don't have the infrastructure to grind up a bear and cut it up properly. They don't have a clean space with tables. When you're living cabin life, guess what? You don't have a clean space to cut meat.
I don't have the snack stick recipe.
Right, exactly. You don't have the snack stick recipe. And a lot of people, if you're working full time and your wife works full time, or you're just a single dude that works full time and you're hunting bears, maybe you don't have the time to case all these pepperoni sticks and smoke them up perfectly and get them all done right. It's a lot of work. It's a time investment. But if you're gonna kill an animal and then bring it home and take it to a processor, I'm telling you, they really appreciate clean meat when you bring it to them. There are several good processors here in town. Some people go all the way down to Delta and give Delta their animals. There's a Santa Smokehouse in town. There's one out in North Pole that I'm spacing the name of. I want to say it's like Mid-State Meats or something like that. I took a moose to them at one point. They did a really good job with it. Those are just the three that are coming to mind. I think there's a couple more. But whatever you're doing, when you get it back to your house and you're hanging that meat up and you're working the hide and everything like that, before you go to take that to the processor, go over it with a bottle of vinegar. Works really well. It's a little bit acidic. It'll kind of get that crusting going a little bit faster. It'll keep any bugs off of it during the heat of the day. But go over that with that and a little spray bottle and a rag. Get all that hair off there. Get all those twigs off. Any dirt that may have gotten on there. We're in the woods. It's dirty. But when you bring them a nice, clean, wiped down, no hair on it, no twigs, no leaves, it makes a huge difference on the meat you get back, and it makes a huge difference in the amount of work that they have to go through to process that.
A lot of them now require that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they won't. A lot of them won't take dirty meat like that. Some of them, once they really get rolling, they start intercepting a lot of people's kill.
Especially caribou is really bad.
Yeah, they won't even take a lot of these guys once they get rolling, they won't even take it bone in. They tell you to debone it, make sure it's clean.
Yeah,
I've heard of people getting certain outfits just denying meat altogether.
Yeah,
they're we're not taking that.
There was a year I brought a moose in, and this is not to brag on myself or anything, but literally when I took it into them, the guy called people out of the shop because I guess they just gotten so many dirty moose and dirty caribou that time of year, and he was like, check.
That's awesome.
That's all I did was just wipe it down a little bit and make sure it got a nice crust on it. It was clean. It's easy, but it's just that one extra step that you can take, and it makes all the difference.
No, it's just consistency throughout the process too, right? There's going to be a little bit of leaves and hair on the meat. It's going to happen.
Gonna be, yeah.
But even if you're cutting it all apart yourself, when you're on the table there, you have a roll of paper towels sitting there, and all you need when you're dealing with just that freshly cut meat, and you roll it over, and there's a hair sitting on it, you grab that paper towel, it'll pluck that hair right off the meat, and it works really well. I don't know if you've used that, but
I use like a terry cloth.
Oh, there you go.
And a water spray bottle.
That's it.
And so what I'll do is obviously it'll get its crust, I'll hang it. And when I go to work on it, I'll take and I'll start trimming off like the silver skin.
Mm-hmm.
Silver skin. And then I'll take that rag and I'll get it damp and I'll clean it. And when I was learning how to process meat and stuff, I would talk to guys and they'd be like, well, you're always going to have fur in your meat.
No.
You don't need to do that.
Nope.
I mean, there's occasionally you find a hair, but like
I'm like such a stickler about that.
Me too.
You go run through everything and you're going to have hair in your meat if you skipped over it.
Well,
Right.
and think
You
about
don't
it. That's
need to
your
do that.
food. Like, how careful would you be with anything else?
Why
right?
don't you have
Like-
hair in your steak?
Yeah, exactly. But, and even after it gets a little bit of a crust on it, let's say you're giving it that last once over and it's got a little tuft of hair somewhere or it's got a little bit that just stuck into the skin. Another thing I've done is you can literally just take like one of those little butane torches that you get at the gas stations
burn it off.
and just singe it off real quick. That does just as good. It won't leave any kind of a taste afterwards or anything like that, but it does make it a lot easier for the processor.
My dad was telling me years ago, he had some friends like, hey, could you come help us process this meat or whatever? He said, I went over, it was dirty, hair, dirt, leaves, and all of it. He goes, it's the last time we accepted when they were offering meat to people. That's the last anything. Because, like.
And like my bear meat right now, it's covered in stuff. It's got grass all over it, but I don't overthink that because I'm going to go through, I'm going to trim that. I'm going to clean up each piece and then I'm going to break into it. And that's the time I had.
Yep.
But it's all about what the product is.
Well, and that's just it. We're in the woods. You're dealing with a hide that might flip over the wrong way when you try to roll it a certain
Especially
direction.
On a bear,
And maybe the if you have a heavy quarter, maybe it doesn't exactly, you cut that joint and it just doesn't fall the way you wanted it to. Now it's in a pile of leaves or something like that. You brush it off what you can in the field, but that's reality, right? We're in the woods. Like, it's gonna get dirty. The more you can mitigate that, the better, but perfectly what you said. It's the end result. It's how it is before you
well, and the other thing is
process it.
I'm dealing with it.
Yeah.
I'm not like giving it to someone or
Right.
hey, can you help me with this? Like, it's whatever. And I mean, there is so much grass on that meat right now, but I don't, and I set it on the grass to get it to, because the ground's cold.
Mm-hmm.
I want to suck that heat right out of that stuff, right?
Yep.
And that was my objective. Get it where it's not muddy. Grass is relatively clean. You got some dry stuff that's going to stick to that when you pick it back up. Whatever.
Yep.
But go through and be patient.
Yep. And nothing's going to stick to that a spray bottle and a rag won't take off.
No.
Like, not at all. So, and then you get all these cuts of meat that we were just talking about.
Nice pretty picture on Instagram there.
It's a pretty picture
Beautiful.
on Instagram. You did a wonderful job with that. Or whoever cut it out.
Yeah, no, I cut every piece of meat on that one. Nobody else bothered to pick up a knife. Yep. I'm grateful for being able to use the space.
Yeah, no, it's a nice setup he's got over there. So, all right, you gents got anything else to add?
I know I got another month to hunt, so let's get out of here.
Let's do it.
I need to go clean stuff up. I need to finish.
You've got to finish doing what we were just talking about. So, all right, folks. Well, thanks for hanging in there with us on this one. Hopefully, you are all having good luck out at the baits if you're in Alaska listening, and hopefully you're enjoying the content if you're outside of Alaska. I know there's a spring bear seasons going on in other places. I've seen a lot of pictures on Instagram. So, good luck to everybody chasing spring bears out there. If you have any questions about what we talked about, feel free to reach out to us. If you go to the website, thenorthernhunter.com, we've got the contact button there, or you can reach out to either one of our socials if you search at The Northern Hunter on Facebook or Instagram. And a couple things we've talked about in this episode. If you go to the partners page, you'll find links and discount codes for would be Hammer Bullets, what Mo took his bear with. They work great and they're always in stock and ready to ship. Hammer does a great job of making sure they get a quality product to you as fast as they can. We have a discount code with them. He also used the 60-inch club game bags to get that bear out of the woods with, and those things work great if you're curious about different sizes and stuff like that. I mean, the caribou and elk bags work great for bear. Like you pointed out, he got a whole base carcass in one of those bags, and they have many different sizes in there that are good for quarters and all kinds of different stuff. So make sure you check out that link. We have a discount code with them as well. Obviously, you had your Stealthy Hunter rifle cover on your gun when you were going out there on your wheeler. And yeah, and all of us are using Beta 907 products to bring bears.
That's right.
So we got a discount code with them too. If you need to freshen up your bait with anything, use Beta 907. It's the best stuff on the market. We've been using it since long before this podcast existed. And we're very happy to be partnered with her over there. And other than that, guys, if you wouldn't mind leaving a rating and a review, 5 stars is always best, and written reviews go a long way in helping us share this show. It's the only form of advertising we use. We don't pay Instagram or any of those other ones. We literally can't. If you share our stuff on Insta, that's a huge benefit too, because they're constantly fighting the hunting community. So, but other than that, thank you, gentlemen, and to all our listeners, until next week, get out there, get after it, and good luck. We'll see you there.